Finance Committee meeting to order on May 16th, 2023 at 6 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this evening. It's a continuation of the FY 2024 municipal operating budget, which is order number 23-100-8881. Last night, we adjourned, and I will begin with going down to the bottom of the list, and we'll start with the item that says Human Services. And the first one is Human Services, and that is on page 101. Any questions from the council on page 101? Council.
I'm not for sure who can help out, but obviously it went up a little bit to 110,000 from 41,106. I don't know if anyone can just give a little summary of what's happening. I presume that's a position, but that's what I figured. Just so the general public knows why it went up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll repeat it. So, on the line item for the Human Services.
So we have the same contract that
Yes.
we passed for a number of years now in Human Services with United Way, and so we're obviously extending that again. Nielsen does a fantastic job, and as I stated in the letter, what I'd like to do this year is increase the services up there to include a social worker. Social worker will have a master's degree. That's what we're shooting for right now. We've been working with Paul Minor over the United Way to find someone that would fit into the process, and you know, so that's why there's an additional $70,000 in there. But they've been great. They really have, you know, and we'll have someone over here.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, to the Mayor, the additional personnel, the additional funds for it, will that cover the $68,894? Will that cover their benefits, or will they be a contracted to the?
Just a contract with United Way. We pay so much a day to United Way. We don't pay for holidays. We don't pay for anything. We just pay so much a day, and that's the end of it.
So that
in fact,
amount,
we kind of bumped that up a couple dollars a day only because Paul hadn't done it in a couple of years.
So that amount there is their determination on what they will need to hire some person to do the work.
We did some work with other communities to try to find out what they were paying. I think Natick has a couple of people over there. Framingham has a whole office of people. So we just wanted to get an idea. That's the number we came up with. If we put it in our budget, obviously it'd be probably 1.5 times that because of the benefits and everything. Through the United Way, we're just going to pay a flat amount.
Okay. Thank you. And that's for a full-time social worker dedicated to Marlborough only?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Any further questions on that item? Seeing none, well, we have them. Oh, Council Linus, yes. Yep.
Where will that person work out of?
At this point, we're probably looking at housing it up at the Walker Building, like in the same area as Nilser is. They work now with the food pantry and that whole group together up there. So.
Thank you, Councilor. So while we have the mayor right here, if you could, we'd like to look at the License Commission on page 38. If you could, if we have any questions in regards to that.
And at any time, Mr. Chairman, I have a list of answers to a list of questions that came up last night. So okay. Be glad to fill those in whenever you want to do that.
And these are the licenses for the commission, but I have no questions. Okay, moving on then. Celebratory mood. Let's go to celebrations. On page 110, I had no questions, but if the council may. Any questions in regards to the page? Oh, perfect.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Council Pro.
Thank you. I just had a question. I know that this is being level funded, but in terms of things like the parade and the concert, is this, I guess, what are the tangible things it's going towards? Is it to get people, you know, security related to the parade, or putting out all of the different materials affiliated with it? Like, what really falls under that line item for the parade? And then the concerts, is it the lighting, the stage, or is it more paying the artists who are performing?
The parade is kind of seed money. Obviously, we need to raise a lot more than that to put the parade on. So we end up with a lot of contributions over the years, but that's kind of the base to get things going. We're really fortunate to have Melanie Wampum agree to do one more year. Originally, she had said she couldn't do it because of her work schedule, but that changed. We actually started posting a job to try to find someone. It's just next to impossible. So fortunately, she gave Trish a call and said, I'll do it one more time. So we're really excited about that, and you know, she can do it in half the time of anyone else because she's done it so many times and done a great job. So, you know, the different areas, the Memorial Day and Veterans Day parades, we give a stipend to the veterans groups, and I'm trying to think what else is in there right now. The concerts are in there. I should grab my book, huh? Can I have that book down there?
Yeah, I was just curious, like the specifics around, I know you mentioned the seed money for the parade. Is the director of the parade stipend as well?
We were just having that conversation. I think we have been given, there was no stipend given for a number of years, and then I think we started doing $2,000 or something. So but that covers everything.
Okay.
Any further questions?
That's helpful. Thank you.
And then moving on, I'd like to, I know you put it in your summary for the budget. Could you go over the Assabet Valley Vocational School on page 77? I know, like you mentioned, we only have one representative from the city, but any movement in the future in regards to kind of bringing that cost down?
No. Again, the problem is we're one of 7 communities.
Yeah.
We pay 50% of the freight. Hudson pays 25% of the freight, and we only have 2 out of the 7 votes. So they kind of do what they want. If I was one of the small communities and could get all these great benefits for a very small amount of money, I would do the same thing. We actually have been talking to an attorney about the possibility of taking a look at that contract, see if there's something in there we can change. We should have a way to vote. It's as simple as that. They do a great job first.
Absolutely.
I mean, they
Absolutely.
do a fantastic job. I'm not looking to take anything away, but it would be nice if we had a little bit better say in that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ray. Any, Council Pro.
Yes, I appreciate, I know you brought it up yesterday around that we don't have, you know, more than one representative on the body. Are there ever times that they would come before the council beyond?
Yep, only once. If they need capital items, and this body, and I was a part of it, they wore us down and we gave them the money. It's the only time that we could have said, no, we're not doing it unless we change the agreement. And we should have done that back then, and we didn't. We had one of the members of the council that was on the committee, a former member of the council that was in the school, and they wore us down. So we agreed with their bonds, because they can't bond without 100% vote of their communities. So that was our opportunity. We didn't do it, and so you know, it's one of those, I wish we could do it again.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, because it seems like they should have some sort of accountability to come before us and at least give us an update. Obviously, we have it in written form, but the way that the superintendent came to talk about public schools and, you know, obviously they're doing a lot of great work over there. It'd be nice to have them have a stronger relationship with us, but I recognize that that's not something they're required to do.
Yeah, and they'll be more than willing to come, but don't even think you're cutting any money out, because
Right.
you know, we were given that lesson a long time ago, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In the reference material document, in the first section under auditor, there's an Assabet report, and there's page 5 of the report. They do a school town breakdown, number of students per town per grade. If you look at what's happening, basically, Marlborough's taken over the school, and I'm not being joking about that. 172 students from Marlborough out of a total of 303 for the freshman year. 128 for grade 10 out of 286. And you can see within this graph the shift of students coming from Marlborough more than anything else. That's why the income's going up, because we're sending more students there. Now, to your point, you know, if we're providing significant share of students there, you know, having a single vote while, you know, for sake of argument, Shrewsbury has 2 in their freshman class, you know, and they have equal votes to us. What's going on in Assabet we're seeing here now as an issue, but it's not going away. It's about how Assabet's getting structured in representing the broader community. Because the outliers, the towns that are further away, are breaking their strings with Assabet. And that's what I'd like to hear from Assabet. There's no one here from Assabet to ask that question, but that's the type of question we need to know.
And if I could just say, I know that, I think it was Councilor Dumas that brought it up last night about operations and oversight. They wouldn't be opposed to coming. It just kind of wastes everyone's time. But, you know, if you would like them to come to operations and oversight just to give an overview of what's going on over there, again, they do a great job. They really do. But it's housed in the community. We pay half the bills. The other thing that has changed there, it was a big push from the mayors throughout the state, was changing the entrance requirements. Because I'm sure a number of you who receive phone calls saying, hey, can you help me get my kid into Assabet? It's like, no. You know, it's like getting into the charter school. It's just, you can't. But they've changed the requirements to get in there. Because my feeling always was, it's a vocational school. And we have kids in the high school that are having trouble, you know, learning English and staying in the system. And we're trying to teach them, you know, physics and science and engineering. And they're just getting so lost, they just quit. Whereas if we send them over there and they become a plumber, they can make $100,000 a year for the rest of their lives. You know, so it's that the trades that I want to see expanded, and some of these kids, my own opinion is I don't think they should be doing the MCAS exams or anything else. They should be doing vocational trades and getting these kids out in the street. You can't find a plumber or electrician or anyone else out there today.
Who runs operations and oversight nowadays? So anyway, we carry this question. Thank you, sir.
Any further questions for the mayor in regards to that? Perfect. Moving on to the last one, moving to Human Services, the Council on Aging, on page 103. Pretty self-explanatory. I did not have any questions, but I'll leave that up to the council.
So, to the mayor,
Councilor?
so we're pretty much funding it the same way as we did last year?
Yeah, through the grant. We pay a couple line items through the city, and the rest of it is paid through the state grant.
Okay. Will that, do you know any foresight if that will be the same situation in future years, that grant?
I would think so. I don't see any reason we'll be changing that. Do you have anything to add?
It's my understanding, at least for the foreseeable future, according to Trish Pope, she's expecting to get more grant money next fiscal year than she did this year, so.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Councilor. Any questions? I think that should do it for a bit, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to go through some of those concerns, questions?
Absolutely.
Clarifications?
Yes,
Because there
yes.
was a lot of issues that came up that I kind of let the department heads run with everything, and I didn't want to interfere with all the questioning. But I just want to first of all say, a budget is a bunch of assumptions and estimates. There's very few times that we can put an exact number in there unless we have a specific contract or something like that. So this whole thing, whether we're talking about the new growth of $2 million or a 10% preliminary value increase in a single-family home. These are all projections. They're all best estimates we have at the time. I know that the electric was a big issue that came up from Councilor Roby and Councilor Ossing. You know, we had a situation in the city where our contract and the municipal aggregation contract is going to end in the same vicinity of time. Right now, the city has a great contract for under 9 cents for our municipality, and it's working good, and that's going to be expiring toward the end of the year. So they're out negotiating right now, and obviously this is a field that the president knows very well, so I know that Chris Dahomey reached out to see if we could get some feedback from him on whether what we've been looking at is a good rate. So we're looking at about $12.55 was the rate yesterday. I didn't sign it because I hadn't had a chance to talk to the president about it yet. So I said I'm letting that one pass, and next time it's in that ballpark, we'll talk about signing it. If we end up getting a $12.55 rate, going up from just under $9 where we are, 9 cents where we are today, that's a 44% increase. Not because of usage or anything else, it's 44%. Half the year at that rate is 22%. So if we use exactly the same usage as the current year that we're in, and we don't know what that's going to be the final number until the end of the year, but it's going to be a 22% increase just because of the new rate. And we're also adding into that new rate a new library that we got to keep the lights on for. So I did reduce that line item from the request because it was higher than this, and the city ended up with a 14%, a 13.98% increase, and the schools we have at 7.61%. Are those going to hold up? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But the reason there's two different numbers there is because we're opening a new library. So there's a new building that we're adding on there. As of right now, 10 months into the year, we've used 83% of the budget for this year, and we're 83% into the year. So we're pretty damn close. And we're looking at a 22% increase for next year. So I just wanted to clarify that to, you know, any cuts, you want to cut it, cut it. Have a basis for cutting it, though. The facilities director, I know the president brought this up, and I just wanted, we went through the calculation today. I started him increasing the 2 steps as allowed with his background from one of the school districts, and his pay for FY24 is $111,307.94. That's with one additional step next May 15th, and the 2% increase that everyone's getting in July 2nd. So that's the answer on that one. The water, I know there was a question from the president about the number of 7.225 didn't match the information that we received from MWRA. I just want to throw up the caution flag to the counselor from the MWRA to not have an appearance of a conflict, but that number is 7.134455. In addition to that, there's an estimated Mass DEP Safe Drinking Water Act assessment of $14,000. There's also an estimated contract cost use of, I'm going to ask the counselor to help me a little bit, polyorthophosphate, am I good? Drinking water corrosion control chemical. We're estimating that to be $76,545. And that totals out to 7.225. Next item was the number of deletions, and I'm not taking these in any order, just in the order I got the information today from different department heads, but the only deletions I believe that are in the budget are principal clerk from the payroll department and the part-time clerk in the clerk's department, or election department. So the big discussion last night, and I think I'm gonna hold that for a second, on the taxes. And again, I think the other question on MWRA was holding the rate. We're looking at a surplus this year, a substantial surplus this year. And although I thought we were done with Northborough, we're gonna go a little bit longer and hopefully get that done, but I thought we were gonna be done and just didn't work out. The snow and ice, I know Councilor Roby brought up the snow and ice, and I just wanna correct something that was said. I never once said it's gonna save the taxpayers money. The quote in the agreement says, "This will soften the burden of using free cash in the future for this purpose." What I meant by that is the fact that every year we rely on that free cash to pay down our snow and ice. And yes, every year for the last umpteen years, we've had a decent amount of free cash. And we do that. I know that I've been very successful in having excess free cash. I can't control revenues. I have virtually no control over revenues. So if they start running short, I have to slow down or freeze expenditures. That's all we can do. So we purposely use conservative numbers. And every budget I've built with our finance team, with President Ossing, it's always been the intent to use conservative revenues, and that's what we continue to use, and that's why we do have some free cash at the end of the year. But whether it's in the budget or whether it's free cash, it's still the same assessment, Counselor. It's still on the taxpayers. It's not like we save the money if we take it out of the budget and take it out of free cash. It's the same thing. It's just not using that free cash at the end of the year, and it allows whoever the executive is up there to do different things, whether it's to buy equipment. I like to leave some extra in there so it rolls over. We know we have something rolling over, but if there's nothing there, you know, that has never been an issue in the city since I've been here. Although I shouldn't say that, because back years ago, there were some years that free cash was very lean. So, just wanted to clarify, I never said the taxpayers would save money, and whether it comes out of free cash or comes in the budget, it's the same thing. And I think the president agreed with me when I told him about it, that this is a good opportunity to get that up, and he said, I agree that it's a good opportunity because of the money we receive from Boston. And then projects, I know Councilor Perlman brought up the projects. The clock tower was one of the projects you approved with the APA money, of $1.5 million. I talked to the new facilities director today about that. We're trying to prioritize projects to make sure we get them all out the door as quick as possible. The APA money we need to get spent by a certain amount of time and get it finalized. And again, I think Councilor Dumas brought up O&O for projects. Not a bad idea. You know, have the facilities director and you know, whoever you want come down and we can talk about the projects we have going on in the city. I asked you to go on the DPW website. We have that interactive map that I put up many years ago. Go on there, it'll tell you where we're doing projects throughout the city. I know they sent out letters, I believe today, or they're going out tomorrow, to Cedar Hill, Francis Street, Crescent Street, and one other. And I can't remember the fourth one. But they, Francis Street. But they're going out just to let neighbors know that this is gonna start happening. So they send them out when the crews are just about coming into town. So the last piece I want to bring up, oh yeah, and on the availability of free cash for snow and ice, I just, you know, I know there was a question about how much is there. After we do the snow and ice deficit of 1.6, and I hope you transfer the balance of the 1% for the 94,000, I have all intention of sending down the $1.4 million next week. There was never an intent not to do that. It was just simply, it wasn't on the top priority list. We had till the end of the year. I was dealing with a bus strike. So it just wasn't a top priority for me at the time. It was never my intent not to send it down. If that's where you want it to go, that's where it's gonna go. So on the last issue I just want to touch on is the average family home and the assessment. I just again want to clarify something. So to go back to last November and every November, in the book for the tax classification hearing in the front, it has new growth revenue. New growth revenue is described as property taxes derived from newly taxable properties like new construction, additions, renovations, subdivisions, or personal property. Basically, other than personal property, it's anything you pull a building permit for. It's additions. It's a new building. It's an addition to the commercial property that's there. It has nothing to do with the valuation process. It's the new value that's coming into the city that's been so important here in the city, and as the assessor said, the majority of Marlborough's comes from its personal property tax. I worked with the assessor today to refine the numbers. I know President Ossing was firing out, requests to him. Obviously, he didn't have everything in front of him, and he was talking, trying to answer the best he could. We worked today, and using assumptions. Again, we're using assumptions and estimates. The assumption is $2 million of free cash. The assumption is our tax levy is $107 million, $107,531,418. The assumption is there's a 10% increase in the typical home value. With that tax rate at 1.45%, which is what we used last year, he came in with a number of 1.4. So what that did, and I know the president knows this, it shifts the value over to the residential side. So if we were looking to shift the value back to the residential side at 140, everyone's correct, it would have been $261 increase. If we leave it exactly where it was last year, and we have an increase of 10%, which is an estimate, it's an assumption, it's based on what we have for information today, that average home will see a $6 decrease in their taxes. If the president gets the cuts in that he wants to get in, and the levy is going to be $106,531,418. The rate will be $10.39, and the average house will go down $56, based on these assumptions. So, I think that answers the questions from last night. I'll be happy to take any more. The only thing I ask you is when you finish this budget, you guys are like the jury. You're independent votes. Every vote here has the same value. And don't just take cuts because someone hands you a piece of paper and says, these are my cuts. Make cuts because you think, like I told you, you didn't have a clear answer. You didn't get the information that you were looking for. If that's the case, cut the line item. If you don't feel like you got what you needed out of it, cut the line item. If not, then find some justification to cut it, but I don't think there is one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Orr.
Thank you. While we're on free cash, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
We're assuming these numbers, and hopefully they'll be close to what you're saying, and I know a lot of work goes into it from you and your assessor and all the other people involved. What are we looking at for next year? What's the horizon looking like? I mean, is it free cash going down because of the economy, or are we?
So free cash is basically a few different numbers. And just to be really, really basic about it, it's basically whatever we have for free cash this year gets kicked into next year. So right now, with the transfers that I anticipate, we're looking at $1.9 million in additional money, unless I do a capital request and you approve it. And I'm up in the air about that, but I think I'd like to get something down because we have some issues with smaller stuff. So right now we have 1.9. In addition to that, any additional revenues in excess of what we projected back last year. So the end of the year comes, we projected 100 million, we take in 102 million, that gets added to free cash. If our budget is $188 million and we only spend $186 million, that $2 million gets added to free cash. Some years we do obviously better than others, but that's a real basic formula. So if you take where our revenues are, if we're in excess, our expenditures, if we're running, to where we have leftover money in the budget and that free cash and that the ballpark, the president agree with that?
How you just presented is correct.
In the ballpark? I mean, there's a bunch of other things to go in there. I can't tell you whether we're gonna have, I'm on Diane early, not as early as the president is. What's next year's number gonna be? He wants to know on July 1st, I give it till like the 5th, so.
Well, we'll give you that time, but I'm very curious if it's gonna go up or down.
Yeah, but she usually doesn't give me a number on the 5th. She usually tells me I have to wait. Because, again, after we close the year July 1st, we still have bills coming in that get thrown back into June and we encumber money for that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ruby?
I almost forgot my question. You gave two different pieces of information on the tax rate. One was something about $6 difference, and I didn't know if that was...
If this budget is approved as is, no cuts, and all the assumptions are correct, there's a $6 reduction in the average home.
How?
If there's $1 million additional cuts made, there'd be a $56 reduction in the average home.
So $6 off of the number that's sitting here, 261.88?
Let me find that page.
Or the 50?
So, forget about the 61, it's actually 58.50. So the 24 with new growth, right now on your page, it says 61.18.15. That's at 100, that's at 1.4. Shifted it back to the residential. It's kind of been a goal that the city's had. That's, the chamber pushes us every year to get down to the 1.4. And usually the president and I will get together and have a discussion about where should this be. Because, we can get down there, but the residents are gonna pay more, and we're not looking to do that. But the values, it's based on values. So if the budget goes through as is, all the other assumptions are the same, it's $58.50 for the average tax bill. If you cut another $1 million out of here, it's $5,800 for the average tax bill. And the interesting thing is that $50, it seems to always have been like $50, $60, within that range there. And that's what kind of perked my ears up last night when I heard the assessor give a number, the president gave out a number. It just didn't seem right, so.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. President?
So I'm sorry, apologize, Mr. Mayor. So the information that was provided in the background document that says it's a $262
Yep.
value, that's based on a split of what?
1.4.
1.4. And you're saying if it goes to 1.45, that tax rate then becomes
$10.48. And again, that's 1.45 is what we had last year, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any other questions for the mayor at this point? See none, we'll continue with the, going through the line items then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to administration, the city council budget on page 13. Any questions in regards to that?
So, Mr. Chair,
Oh, Mr. President.
so again, council, so the city council budget, very simple. The secretary and the councils all got a 2% salary adjustment. The city clerk's stipend was adjusted to align with the salary ordinance, was a decrease. The part-time clerk's salary was adjusted by a step change. Longevity and sick leave buyback were adjusted per city guidelines, and there was no change to the office supply. It was level funded. So the overall budget increased $4,728, or 2.01%.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a question about item 550, city clerk, $2,090. We pay you more than that, Steve? What's that number for? It's not your salary, is it?
So hang on, okay, so I'll take the question.
That's
No.
fine, that's fine.
So he gets a stipend for sitting in that chair and keeping us
In the
in
meetings.
line on Monday evenings.
Wait, we pay him that too?
Yeah, I know, it shocks me as well.
Okay. So, thank you for that clarification, I appreciate it.
Oh, Councilor Dumas.
Regarding the city council budget, so our part-time admin, it's
Yep,
getting a
so-
step increase, so
Yep, so
how often?
Sarah's working still for us. She does all the transcripts for all the public hearings. So we'll be an underrun in that line item through the course of the year, because she only works when we have public hearings or as Karen needs assistance.
So about how many hours a week or month?
No, like last week, nothing, because there was no public hearings.
Right.
This coming meeting, we have 4, so she'll be very busy for the following week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Moving on, and I guess it'd be that time, we'll get to the city clerk's budget, if we had any questions on starting on page 34, which also includes the election registration, as well on page 36, but starting on page 34. Council Perlman.
Give the clerk a moment to
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
join us. It's a different seat for you.
Yes. Good evening. In case any of you don't know me, I'm Steve Carrigan. I'm the city clerk.
Welcome to Marlborough. A lot of this makes sense. I have a question. I know we got an email about the elections clerk leaving. Is that a position that you're hoping to fill? I'm sure it's reflected within the budget, but was just curious about like staff turnover in your office and that specifically.
You are correct. Kevin McLaughlin, who we recently hired just about 8 months ago as the elections clerk, has tendered his resignation. I'm saddened to see him go, but I'm happy to report that he has taken a position as the assistant town clerk in the town of Westboro. So, I mean, it was a promotion for him, just as his predecessor in that job, Leo Mercado, who was the elections clerk, tendered his resignation a year or so ago because he became the deputy town clerk in Acton. So, not for nothing, I guess, we must be doing something right in the office because they're leaving to become deputy and assistant town clerks and town clerks. I do intend to fill it. I'm going to need to fill it this year. Not that it's not the most important election that we have coming, but it will be a little softer than it will be next year in 2024, where we have 3 elections. So my intention is to fill the position hopefully as soon as possible. Yes.
All right, well,
So the budget number may be a little bit different because obviously the new person would start at a lower step than where Kevin is currently.
Yeah, that was my question, but it makes sense. I mean, people are leaving for a vertical move, but I was just wondering if the salary was appropriate, at that given position.
Well, we could always, I would never argue to not look at anyone's salary and to say that they should be earning more money. But the reason that the people have been leaving my office is because they're taking other jobs in other communities for an increase. I mean, unfortunately, they look at my assistant Wilson and myself, and there's not a chance in the very near future that I'll be retiring anytime soon that I'm aware of. So they're taking the opportunities that are coming in. There are a lot of clerks across the Commonwealth that are retiring. They're reaching that age where, everyone has decided they want to retire. So there's a lot of opportunities for people in the clerk's office.
Okay, no, that's super helpful to understand. Your office does so much for the council and the city, and we know, I feel like you're always with a lot of binders around all of City Hall, so we definitely really appreciate it. And then I know there were like decreases in the advertising and professional and tech services.
Advertising, basically what I did is I looked at the trends that we have over the last few years. It all depends on the work of the council and what happens with the council. A lot of it is ordinances and things like that, and that have to be advertised before passage, after passage, things like that. So some years, for the last 3 or 4 years, it's been much less than what we've traditionally seen. As far as professional and technical services, I did reduce that a little bit just because it was based on the elections and things like that, that we won't need as much as we will probably in fiscal '25, because then it'll, be a little bit more as well. So.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Roby?
Thank you. So I know that there's a request to increase salaries, and we can't add to the mayor's budget, but if the ordinance change is approved by the council for the salary, he would have to come for a supplemental or a transfer?
That is my understanding, yes, that if the council enacts I had originally submitted a couple of changes to my budget to the mayor's office, for the assistant clerk and for another member of the staff. The mayor didn't move forward with those changes, but I know the council president has submitted the salary ordinance for the assistant clerk, and if it is passed, it's my understanding that once it's ordained, then the city would be required to fund the position at whatever the salary ordinance is.
And the elections clerk, you plan on keeping? I mean, your notes indicated that that position was going away.
The election clerk I had planned, I've always planned to keep. The position originally, in my original budget submission, I had proposed a reduction of the part-time clerk because looking at the increases for the assistant clerk and for the vitals clerk in my office, that was kind of the trade-off. It's very difficult to find someone to work on a part-time basis in our office. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to do, and to have someone who's only available 19 hours a week. We were fortunate for a while. We had a couple of people that worked there for a few years, but it's very difficult to find someone on a regular basis to do the work that we do, just because there's so much to learn and there's so much to remember. It's sometimes even difficult for us who are there every day.
So that's when you will be posting the position?
I will be posting. I've talked to Human Resources already. We've submitted the paperwork. The exit interviews, will be taking place, and we'll be posting the position of elections clerk ASAP, because I want to begin the process to try to get somebody hired sooner rather than later. Just because, like I said, we're coming into an election season as it is, as you all are aware.
So that line has nothing in it. Is that an issue?
No, the part-time clerk has nothing in it currently. If the other changes aren't going through, I would like to maybe see if we could restore that position, and I don't know if I'm going to then find someone for that. Yes. Sorry, I misunderstood your question, Councilor Roby.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. President.
So if you don't mind me going, Councilor, so let me give a little background on the city clerk and the election. So a little quiz. Who does the city clerk and the elections department report to?
City Council.
The city council, that is correct, all right? So the elections and the clerk's position reports to the council, all right? There's 65 line items in the budget, or budget items. The mayor has 62 of them. The city council is responsible for 3. The council, the clerk, and elections. We're all tasked with putting a budget together. Back in March, we put the budget together that had a salary adjustment for Wilson, or the assistant clerk. Primary reason was that now the 7-step salary ordinance makes him a 40-hour-a-week employee. He's here anyway. And as you're seeing with people leaving, there's a challenge with the salary. So it's a minor increase, it's a $4,000 increase, but we submitted it. Back in March, the mayor said, send me the salary ordinance. but he didn't put it in, he didn't file. We also asked for an upgrade of the senior clerk to a principal. In doing so, we would forego the part-time clerk. If not, we wanted the part-time clerk in. After listening to the mayor, I understand his rationale for not adjusting senior and principal clerks until he looks at everybody, so I'm good with that. But I expected the part-time clerk to be back in our budget. Again, the budget I submit that you get to vote on, all right? Just like he submits the fire and he submits the police, I don't get to cut those. He submits them, council gets to vote on them. But for the council, clerk, and elections, he took it upon himself, which can he do it? Yes. Should he do it? No, it's not his department's. But that's behind us. So then the draft budget comes out in April, the week before it's finalized, and I note that those positions that we requested weren't in the budget. So I asked him, could you please put them in the budget? Right? Didn't do it. So I will be asking, and I'm hoping the council will support, adding back in the part-time clerk for the elections and adjusting the salary for the assistant city clerk, which we have the salary ordinance that we'll be taking up on our May 22nd meeting. So we'd have to ask for a supplemental budget, so it has to come down from the mayor, because we can't, well, we can, but that process gets a little longer, and depending on how things go, I prefer not to use, quote, the nuclear option. I'd rather just work cooperatively with the mayor's office and ask that he do what the council requests. I mean, if you don't want to do it, you're entitled to not support it and say, no, we don't want to do it. Leave the salary ordinance as is and don't put in a part-time clerk. But look at the positions that were cut in the budget. The part-time clerk in the elections division and the principal clerk because they hired a payroll manager. Right? So my personal feeling is we have not been treated with what I call the same opportunities as everyone else, and I would expect that if the mayor reflects on this, he works cooperatively with the council to provide the council what we're asking for, which is the restoration of the part-time clerk and the salary adjustment to the assistant clerk. It's not, this isn't a lot of money. This isn't sending the world over. You know, this is, what's being challenged is the council's ability to manage their departments. All right? We ultimately get the vote on it, but, you know, he's unfairly, in my opinion, not allowing us to do what we think is right to run our departments. I don't tell him how to run the fire department, don't tell him how to run the police, DPW, or any other departments. That's his job. Clerks and elections are my job based on your, should I say, confidence that you elected me president. I'll let you decide if that was a good call or not. You guys can make that decision. All right? But again, as a manager of the department, there's no reason why the budget I submit should go to you to say if you like it or not. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to approve it. But you weren't even given the opportunity to look at it. Right? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, was it Council Orman?
The question that I had was answered already, so thank you.
Councilor Giussette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just two questions. First is the elect registration other, the big jump in price. Is that because of the purchasing of voting machines? Page 36.
Sorry, page 36?
Page 36. Election registration other.
The increase of 18,500?
Yeah.
Most of that is due to poll workers.
Okay.
They fall in that line item because for this fiscal year, there are potential of three elections.
So, okay, you said that now twice. In 24?
In fiscal 24, there's the potential of three elections because we will have the municipal preliminary,
okay,
if needed. I don't know
okay,
if we have sufficient candidates.
Yeah.
The municipal election, which will be in November of this year, of 21, and then the presidential primary will take place in March of 2024,
okay,
which falls into this
fiscal year.
Okay. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that line was reduced by some, because we're using some grant money that we have available that we did last year as well, but we don't have as much available, so we've reduced it a little bit. It would be a little bit higher. But.
Okay, so the election registration other is manpower, not equipment.
Correct, and then some printing, there's $6,000 in printing because we're responsible for printing the municipal election ballots, and I have to anticipate both elections happening, even though if we don't have the preliminary because we don't have sufficient candidates that run, then we won't spend that money, but we
Right,
will
you
need
still
to.
have to put it there just in case.
Correct, just in
Yeah,
case we
right.
need it, yes.
Right,
Yes.
yeah. So, because we talked about changing the ballot boxes, right?
Correct, that was also, that was a capital request.
But
that I
that's
had-
not in the
that
budget,
I had
that's in a capital
submitted.
request, which is separate from the budget.
Correct, that's separate
Okay.
from the budget, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, that's
something that I submitted separately that.
Yep, okay,
I'm not sure if it's
okay,
coming down.
thank you for the clarification, great.
Yes.
But, Mr. Chair, if I could just add to Councilor Doucette's point and what Mr. Kerrigan said, that internal transfer was sent up that I would anticipate seeing with the year-end transfers that every department's been asked to do. It's going to show up on our May 22nd agenda.
Correct, and I apologize, yes, as the, I submitted an internal transfer, because I had two requests. One was for voting booths.
Yes.
Which is about $42,000 that I had submitted a request back in February asking to go to the council,
And we've seen that already.
and then I resubmitted that recently with the year-end transfers to the auditor that I'm anticipating will be coming down with. That's for the voting booths. Then I did ask for capital money, which was separate outside of the budget for voting machines. I had two separate things of voting equipment.
Okay.
One's machines and one's just booths.
Okay, yeah, because in the description that you had with the voting booths, you were referring to machines, I just saw the booths.
Right, they're two separate things.
So,
There's,
right.
the machines, the AccuVote machines that we have, they are, what year is this, 2023? So they're, 2007, we took ownership of them, so what's that, 16 years old? 16, roughly 16 years old.
What brand are they?
I'm sorry?
Who's the manufacturer?
Who is the, well, they're AccuVote, I'm not sure who the, manufacturer is, but they were, as soon as we took ownership of them in 2007, brand new, and in like 2008, they became obsolete because they stopped making those. So, and many communities across the Commonwealth still use them. I don't want anybody to think that there's anything wrong with them. It's just they're old and they're getting tired, and it's probably time to change them, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Council Perman?
Thank you, Chair Irish. One other question I had, I know you listed in your accomplishments around the street listing and then the local census work. I'm wondering with the responses to the local census, I know which we don't want to call it necessarily.
We don't want to call it
the same
census, no, people get very,
The
street listing, yeah, the
street
local street listing.
listing, how is that reflected in budget? Is that under the printing? Is that under, like, where does it fall financially? And then how is that sort of, what other strategies? I know some people don't fill it out,
Correct.
and then, that causes problems down the line. And I know it's hard to reach people if they're not looking at their mail. Like, what else is happening to kind of ensure people fill it out?
Every January, just to give you an overview, every January we are required under Massachusetts general law to send out what's called the street listing. It's the city's way of counting people who are here. And it's also to keep you, if you're a registered voter, it's to keep you on the active voters list so that, and not to bore you with all the technical election stuff, but, so that's sent out in January. Initial phase, we get a fairly decent response. Everyone usually, sends them in. We're swamped with replies, and then they slowly kind of peter off. We send out a second request, usually around March. We send another mailing out to everybody who hasn't replied, or the households that haven't replied, and hopefully we get some more responses. I can't give you an exact number. Not a lot of people respond to it. They don't think that it's necessary. But then the third mailing, which is actually going out this week, it's called confirmation notices. This is when we send the notice to you and we inform you that you're going to become inactive as a voter. Does not mean that you can't vote. It just means it makes it a little bit more difficult to vote, meaning that when you go to the polls, you will have to show an ID, you will have to swear an affidavit that you currently and continuously reside at the address that you say that you do, because you didn't fill out that street listing that you got in January. We have approximately about 4,000 residents that will be receiving notices that they're going to become inactive voters. And I anticipate probably about 50 or 60% of those people will respond and everything will be okay. But there'll be some that will, when they go to vote on election day, All it does is it slows them down, rather than, you know, I'm Steve Kerrigan, I live at 140 Main Street, check me off the list, here's your ballot, there's the voting booth, you're out and in and out in 5 minutes. I'm Steve Kerrigan at 140 Main Street. Oh, Mr. Kerrigan, we didn't get your street listing back. Can you step over here? You have to sign this affidavit that states that you live at that address. You have to show me your identification just to prove that you are who you are. And then now you get your ballot, you go, you vote, and you leave. So maybe 10 minutes you're in the polling location instead of 5. So.
Okay, I appreciate the context and that.
And as far as financial implications, and I apologize for, you know, there is none. We do everything in-house. We, you know, maybe someday we'll look at having a vendor do our street listing, but we currently, you know, when I was the assistant, I did it, and now it's tasked to Mr. Chu. He does it. We put together as people refer to it as the nosy book, so that you can look and see what your neighbor does for a living and what year they were born. So, and we're in the process of putting that together now. So it'll be ready. It'll be ready probably in late May. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't know if it had to do with any of the, I guess, the cost of printing, but you're saying that's
no, printing is strictly for ballots, so that's only an every other year expense that you see in the clerk's office, because during state elections, the Secretary of State's office picks up the printing for state ballots. We're only responsible for any local elections that we have to print the ballots for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any further questions for the city clerk? Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Moving on to, moving on to the city auditor, page 19. Any questions in regards to the city auditor's reviewing of the budget?
I'll stand up for this one. As you can see, my budget is 97% payroll. There are step increases for the procurement officer and the finance assistant, and I've level funded my office supplies expense.
Thank you. Wonderful. No questions. All right, well, moving on. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. Okay, we will go back to the Finance Director, Jones, starting on page 17, and then we'll start working down for some of those items. Good evening, Director, again.
Good evening again, everyone. So the top portion, the payroll area of my budget, is just contractual increases. The actuarial, which is 11,000, comes on every other year. So I just wanted to mention that that's for the OPEB study. It's an actuarial study that happens every 2 years. The $11,000 does represent a second year review. So the first year when we pay this, we actually get quite the report, and we have a presentation, and they come in and they actually talk to us as a board. And then every other year we get just we send them information, and they take that information because they're only really required to do it every other year. So this particular year is the year that they'll complete the assessment and then come in and talk to the board. And the employment bond, just to remind you, is as the treasurer for the city and with the collector under me, that $2,500 is actually the cost of our bonding. And the postage is level funded, and the bond expenses for when we borrow. So I think that's within my budget, if there's any additional questions.
Any questions for the council? Review of the director's budget. Council Perman?
Thank you. In the letter that we received, I just wanted maybe some clarification around the paragraph around the rare opportunity to invest short-term, the portion of the Chapter 45, Section 55 cash. I don't know if you could maybe speak a little bit more context about what that is.
The 4.5?
The, guess it's within the comptroller department thing, but I know it has to do with Treasury, so I figured I would just ask because I had a question here about it. Yeah, in the supplemental, my apologies.
No, I'm there, but I'm not sure I heard
the
the
second
question.
paragraph in the letter.
Oh, the additional, the 4.75?
Yeah, can you
So-
just explain what that is, just so?
Sure. So a unique opportunity came up this year. We were in conversations with Terenzio, who's our auditor, and Hilltop Securities, which we work with when we do our borrowing. And for the first time in quite a long time, we've been able to invest treasuries with a high rate of return. And so we took a portion of money that we have available, and we invested it. So we came to the council a little earlier, just as a heads up, but we're usually getting around a $2 million return presently on that 40 million. And when we saw this opportunity came up, we were able to invest 40 million and get twice the return. So that the rates have been around 2%. And so these are being invested on a quarterly, semi-annual, and annual basis, which means that we're not completely tying them up all year in case we do need access to cash.
Okay.
But that will run through, and we're watching it as the rates are up there. So we're just after not 5 years or 10 years, but after many decades of a council and a mayor working diligently at a great budget, we had an opportunity to take advantage of something that not a lot of communities have been able to. So it sort of is a compliment to all of you that I just happened to be sitting here when that opportunity came up, but I'm really working on something that you all provided.
Thank you for the context. I saw it, sort of the rare opportunity framing, and thought it was something that I wanted to make sure we highlighted, since I know it maybe doesn't show up, in the way that we're reading just the numbers. So thank you for the context.
Sure.
Any further questions to Director Packer? Seeing none, well, while you're there, we can start going down the list on the financial services. On page 43, other insurance. Any questions on that one, page 43? All good. Next, retirement and pensions, page 45. Seeing none. Retirement and pensions, page 121. Seeing none. Retirement and pensions, page 145. Councilor Brown?
Thank you. Just more of an overarching question with the retirement and pension. I know that these, are going to continue to go up with the more retirements that are occurring across the city, and just wondering if this is keeping pace with what you expect in future years and with the percent increases.
Sure. Actually, what I'd like to do, if she doesn't mind, is Diane actually is associated with the retirement, and I didn't know if maybe she would want to.
So that's a great question. So right now, the retirement board is on track to be fully funded by 2028, 2029. And in order for us to get there, we're required to make these appropriations that are calculated for us. Every other year, we do an actuarial similar that we do for OPEB that determines what, based on the conditions, what our rate of return is and all that. It gives us a schedule, an amortization schedule, as to what we need to appropriate annually to get there. So that's our goal. In 2028, 2029, if all goes well, we can be fully funded. And then people's withholdings from their paycheck will go towards that to keep it funded. And there'll still be a portion that the city has to contribute, but it won't be nearly as large a number as this. Which we then intend to move over to the OPEB, to fund OPEB and try to get that, chip away at that liability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I would point out that 2028, 29 fully funded is going to be a real challenge. We took a significant hit in the retirement funding status, lost, as every retirement system across the country did. We lost about $37 million last year, so it wasn't a good year for us. So I anticipate it to potentially get extended. And why that's a big deal is, as the auditor said, we're counting on fully funding OPEB based on when we fully fund the pension, it then shifts over to OPEB. And that's going to be a challenge right now. I'll just leave it at that.
Good point, Mr. President. When I saw that, I didn't see one municipal office government around us that had any increase. It all went to the bottom, so thank you. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is other general government on page 53. Councilor Jones?
Can we discuss what the increase is for this line item?
Sorry.
There's a $150,000 increase?
There's a $50,000, so we have a policy that we've been enforcing since I arrived, that we try to increase OPEB and the contribution by $50,000 every year. And that $50,000 now brings us up to $500,000, and we're hoping that when we get to the next fiscal year, that it'll go to $550,000. The $600,000 and the $100,000 increase is representative of what we will expect for retirements in the coming fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to other general government, page 127. Seeing no questions, moving on to other general government, page 151. Seeing none, moving on to retirement of debt from the school, page 73. Seeing none, going down to retirement of debt, page 114. Seeing none, going to retirement of debt, page 129. Seeing none, going to retirement of debt, page 153. 153.
Perhaps it'd be helpful just to have a little bit more clarity on, I guess, I'm on page 154, 59965, the pipeline. I know there's a decrease here. Is that just because of what we owe, or?
It could be the timing of the amortization.
Okay.
This is,
So I don't know if the council remembers, I'm sure some of them do, that, and don't quote me on this, but I think it was maybe 5 years ago, we got into a lead pipeline replacement, and every year we were able to borrow about $1 million to replace the lead pipes. So debt came onto the books, and then slowly, and I forget what the time frame was, I think it was a 10-year, no, it couldn't have been a 10-year loan, maybe a 5-year loan. Anyway, some of the debt is coming off of the books, so that's why there's a decrease in that particular pipeline grant loan.
Okay, so this would have to do with that lead pipe replacement program?
Yes.
Okay, and that's related to MWRA, or that's just itemized that way, because that doesn't make sense?
It was, I'd have to go back and look at the paperwork, but I think it was based, I think this grant program came through the MWRA.
Mr. Chair,
Councilor Neiman.
if I can just provide
Thank
a
you,
little
'cause
bit.
I wasn't prepared to answer that question.
Sure, a little bit of context. When the, after Flint, Michigan happened, the Board of Directors at the MWRA decided to bond out $100 million to be able to help their customer communities address these issues. And Marlborough was pretty smart to go ahead and take advantage of that. Basically what happens is it's a 0% interest loan, which allows us to borrow the money for free and pay it back over a certain time period. So a couple of our other communities have joined as well. So that's why it's an MWRA program that is given to its customer communities.
Thank you, Councilor Neiman, for the clarification.
Yes, thank you,
It was
sorry.
it was very helpful, obviously, for the city. Glad we jumped on that. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So we're dropping 200,000, which is great. Should we, it started at 700, it's down to 5, so that means the following year, we're going to get some additional declining here. I'm not saying how much, but it looks like it's big numbers on the way down. Is that true?
Can you do that again? Sorry.
Yeah. So the MWRA pipeline, it was 700,000, drops to 500,000. As you said, it was for the lead pipe resolution. We got rid of them, oh, happy days. We're now at the tail end of the payment cycle. So, you know, money's loosening up and not need to get paid. So we saved 200,000 this year. Next year, we're gonna get another chunk like that, because it's still 500, right? So is that still gonna decline over time? So within a couple of years, is that gonna be 0?
It will eventually. I don't have like the schedules in front of me, but it will continue to drop off. How quickly, I can't tell you right now, but I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, next year is fine, but just showing that the number is declining is all good, so we know that this is cash flow that's gonna free up over time.
In the supplemental information that I provided under the auditor tab, it does show, but it's all pooled together, our existing debt, and it will show you how, as the years go on, how the debt is dropping off.
Right, I did see that, and I appreciate those reports, but it never takes into account future debt that we load onto it too. So,
That's correct, yeah, at this point in time, correct.
yeah, but it's a good report, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Okay, moving on to long-term debt interest, page 75. No question. Oh, Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. So I'm just looking at the drops, because it's 16, 17, 18. Is this changes in interests, or is it retirement of debt? I mean, where did that, because it's significant drops compared to what it was before. But this is preset dates, right? So clarify this for me, right? The 2016 multipurpose interest, that is strictly for money that was borrowed in 2016, right?
Correct. So that was a bond that we went out and borrowed on in 2016. And depending on how the bond was set up, this particular one and most of them, you'll have set principal amounts, and then, you know, your interest is higher in the first years, and then every year it starts to drop down, your interest does. So that's why these amounts are going down.
Okay, so now we're effectively eating at the principal, right? And because we're eating at the principal, the overall interest rate's declining, which is where these reductions are coming from.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Okay, moving on, long-term debt interest, page 116.
So pretty much it's going to be the same scenario for all of these.
Thank you, Dan. Going on to long-term debt interest, page 131. Long-term interest, page 155. Council Perman?
Thank you. Just building off the acronym comment from yesterday, what is MWPAT on page 156? Is that an abbreviation?
Did you say PLT?
MWPAT 58963 on page 156.
I'm not sure that I have that acronym. Yeah, I don't have the acronym in front of me either. We can get that for you.
Okay, I didn't know what that was from before. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's see, long-term debt interest, page 155. Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you heard me, okay. No, sorry. Okay, next is the tax title, page 25. I believe you explained that last night. Yes, you did. Thank you, Director. Yeah. Capital outlay, page 118. Mr. President, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is an item that we reduced last year to no impact of the budget. The advantage of not having it there means the mayor would have to come before the council for free cash transfer, so we get a opportunity to review what those expenditures are. Putting it this way, the mayor gets to do what he wants with no input from the council. So
Thank you, Mr. President.
we'll talk about that at the adjustment portion of the program.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, moving down to employee services, workers' compensation, page 47. Moving on to workers' compensation, page 123. Councilor Doucette?
So, considering we're asking about workers' compensation, why is it that there's no workers' compensation in the budget?
So in my supplemental information, there was a tab in there on workers' comp. Just allow me to get to it. So the city has a workers' comp trust fund, similar to the health insurance trust fund. And over the past several years, the reserves in there were high enough to cover the costs. The costs, our workers' comp costs have come way down to where they were years ago. So the past, I'm not sure how many years, this might be the 4th year we've been able to fund that just purely off of the reserves and not have to supplement that with an appropriation.
So, workers' compensation insurance is self-funded by the city?
Yes.
Thank you.
So it looks like my projection is that we will have $1 million left over in the fund at the end of this fiscal year. Our costs are running about 570, so we may be able to squeak out another 2 more years without having to fund the trust fund.
Thank you.
Councilor?
And if I may, on that same subject, obviously that's not magic. Is that due to all the training now that our employees are getting on workman's comp?
Patrick, I'll defer to you. I really can't speak to that.
Sure. I would say that it's a combination of not only a lot of training, but just a lot of exposure. I think that people are just being more self-aware, and I think the DPW has, I know through our Maya, which is our insurance company, we get a lot of credits for training and a lot of feedback. So we have so much access to safety, and safety is first and foremost. A lot of the operators and people that use the equipment in a lot of areas have to be trained and certified, and along with that goes ongoing training. So I would say it's a combination of items. And one of the things you do too, and Diane projecting that we have what we have, is if claims aren't happening, that's a good indication that whatever we're doing is working.
Moving on to workers' compensation, page 147. Next would be unemployment compensation, page 49. Seeing none. Health/life insurance, page 51. Seeing none. Health, life insurance, page 125. None. Going to health, life insurance, page 149. I'm sorry, what's that? 149.
Page numbers were changed, but it went to 149.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Oh, Councilor Doucette.
It's just about general health life insurance. I have to say congratulations on actually keeping the amount of payments for health life insurance to be as balanced as it is. That this year it's not jumping up significantly as in other years. So how that was negotiated is, congratulations on that one.
Well, I also want to mention that part of what, in increasing the employee rates and not being able to, part of what we did was, we weren't sure if there was going to be a backflow of COVID, meaning that people weren't going to the doctors. People were sort of afraid to be in public, and so for a couple of years, though we developed a healthy balance, it's a trust fund exactly like the workman's comp, we had to be sure that, you know, we didn't want all of a sudden there to be an onset when COVID sort of started to slow, that people were going to go to the doctors. And what we're finding is that that time is starting to pass and the claims aren't increasing. So it afforded us the opportunity again. The fund itself is very healthy and the reserves are very well. But, you know, I don't know that we'll be able to keep this up like Diane. We're actually going to have to up our health care insurance. We'll go back next year and revisit the formula and probably see an increase, minor, but we can afford to do that because of the reserves. And I just want to mention, while I have everybody here, that Harvard, to remind you again that we've been under Tufts and they've now merged with Harvard, and we're starting to see the merge happening, and it's going to be 0.32. So I know with a lot of healthcare change coming down the pike that we'll have to pay very close attention to, you know, the amount of numbers that are going in and the claims we're paying. But we've, again, like the workman's comp, we just never saw that backlog of people that we thought weren't getting to the doctors go, and the claims never elevated. So, again, as we have healthy people.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director. Well, at that point for the Finance Committee, that concludes going through the review of the FY 2024 municipal operating budget. I know going back and hearing some input the last two evenings, I think we're pretty confident in where we may be. If you support the budget or you would like to have items that you may want to reduce, And I will leave that up to the finance and the city council for any input and discussion. Councilor Doucette?
I'll go first. I think that it's a solid budget. I'm not into cutting for the sake of cutting. I think that what was the biggest issue that was brought up last night was the ratio between business and residential tax rates. That's critical. But that's not part of this discussion. That's another discussion to have. So, but overall, you know, I think that this is a solid budget, and I don't see any issues with it. I'll just leave it at that.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? I will go to President Hussey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I think it's important, I sent out the other day, kind of how did we do last year, right? So before we make any decisions this year, take a look at what we did last year and, you know, were they impactful or not? So if you recall, last year, we adjusted the budget by $806,000 reduction. I'm happy to report, and you see the information, city worked out just fine. We didn't impact any city services. All the city employees got what they needed, residents got what they asked for, and more importantly, it was a lower tax rate based on the reductions that this council made. So what you did was okay. You heard the mayor say, if the council makes adjustments, the departments are going to live with it, which is a true statement, right? I mean, they can, you know, they don't cry, but they could be upset about it. But the world will be fine, all right? And you heard the mayor say, many of these are estimates, all right? I go back to, during the course of the fiscal year, we had over $900,000 of internal transfers so far through April. That's just money, it's in the monthly report, moves money around, each department gets to do that. But those are items that we didn't get right, but it's okay, they're moving money around, that's $900,000. February, March timeframe was a mid-year transfer of $1.6 million. Again, monies that we didn't pick out right here, that we, you know, didn't know the right category. Remember, you approve this budget, snapshot in time, right? It's good right now. The day July 1, Diane will tell you all the money starts going in all sorts of different directions. And it's not a bad thing. It's a budget, right? Right? So the next item is year-end transfers. You're going to see next Monday a whole list. They've been typically running in about the order of $1 million. And then I track monthly the underruns in salaries, or all the job postings you see in positions that aren't filled. So we're running over close to $800,000 under budget in salary line items. So you heard the mayor say, any underruns in the budget go get contributed to what?
Free cash.
Free cash the following year. Very good. That's correct. Our revenues right now, we're about $11 million over last year's projection in revenues. The city's doing extremely well. Can change, as we saw in the state. All of a sudden, the next report comes in and the world comes to an end. All right? But we're doing very well, so that's going to look beneficial on free cash standpoint. Last year, we ended a free cash with a balance of $600,000. All right? What was free cash approved for in October? Does anybody remember? $7.5 million. Based on what I'm calculating and showing now, I'm anticipating a similar run. And I'm assuming the mayor's coming down with a capital request, and we're going to end the year with about $400,000 in free cash. But that's just my numbers. We'll wait to see what the mayor decides to send down to the council. So why am I telling you this? God bless you. Thank you. God bless all of us. Any adjustments you make to the budget, the sun comes up tomorrow, department heads get to do what is funded, the employees get what they need, the residents get what they want, but more importantly, any reductions you make lowers the tax rate. It's literally that simple. You heard the mayor say it. So, I mean, if you're happy with where it is now, I'm a little disappointed with the information I get now versus what was presented to us as details to work forward, but again, this particular budget $8.2 million increase is the largest dollar value increase in my 24 years on the council. I mean, you would kind of expect it. It's going to get bigger every year, but they've been typically running in the 6 million plus range. Haven't tripped 7, but 8.2 is relatively large. And yes, we're getting a significant amount of money from the state. But in my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean I have to go spend it. But again, that's my conservative nature, not necessarily shared by everyone. Right, so you ask yourself, you look at the budget, I mean, if you like it, approve it. If you think there's room for adjustments, adjust it. I would ask, as a minimum, that the council take up the request for the part-time clerk in the elections office and the salary for the assistant clerk, and request the mayor submit a supplemental budget. You'll note last year, in the assessor's office, we didn't approve how he was handling it, and he submitted that supplemental budget on the next agenda. I would anticipate, in the spirit of working cooperatively, the mayor would do the same thing. There's no reason not to, right? He's looking for us to approve $8.2 million. We're asking him for $22,000. Yeah. I'll hold the 8.2 because it may not be 8.2 depending what adjustments are made. But still, there's no reason not to approve what we asked for. You get to vote on it. But, you know, as a council, it's our responsibility to make sure we run the elections in the clerk's office as we deem appropriate and should have that opportunity to vote on it. By not submitting that in the budget, he deprived us of that, and I'm asking for your consideration and hope the Finance Committee will make that motion to request the mayor to supplement the budget by adding those 2 line items back in. And I'll be happy to answer more questions as things go on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Roby?
So if I look at the list that Councilor Ossing gave us, his suggestion to reduce the libraries, wouldn't it be the same thing? We're reducing it, but then I would hope that the council would approve those positions. They would just get added right back in, so.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Mr. President.
So my concern, when you put positions in the budget, they're supposed to have a salary ordinance, all right? There is no salary ordinance. This isn't done for mean-spiritedness. His letter even says it's coming later. In the supplemental budget that you send down on May 22nd, hopefully what the council asked for, include the salary ordinances for the library positions, and it's a no-brainer. But we haven't advertised them, they're not approved. You can't be just throwing money into a budget that doesn't have a salary ordinance tied to it. All right, so a little disappointed there. I mean, that's, you know, coming later, you know, submit it with the budget. That's what you're supposed to do. I hope that helps. And so while I'm thinking about it, if I may continue, on electricity. So the mayor is correct. There's going to be an increase in electricity. But if you all recognize your electricity bills, there are 2 parts to your electricity, the transmission and the supply. It's just the supply side that's increasing by that amount, not the entire bill. So I will take issue with the mayor's math on how much is needed. And I will go back to your fiscal year 24 reductions that this council made to both the electricity in the schools and the city side. And what did you hear? They're right on track this year. So the adjustments you made did not impact electricity. And what if they did? He would move money around to cover them. Again, we're running almost $800,000 under in salary line items if he wants to take money out of salaries to move. He would require council approval, but the point I'm trying to press upon the council is it's a $188 million budget. What do you feel comfortable turning to your constituents and saying, I think this is the right product to move? If we do nothing and prove it is, we all know there's a lot of money in there that can be moved around. And I don't think we've done our job, my opinion. The mayor will disagree with me, but that's okay. We can still be adults about it and discuss it. But I hope, based on what I heard tonight, the assistant commissioner's salary line item is 111, he's got 115,000 in there. That's ripe to me for an adjustment. The electricity, I still think 100,000 is fine. The world will still go on. There's nothing, I think I'm being kind, but I do understand he's right, the cost of electricity is going up, but that's half of the bill, not the entire bill. All right, other government, reserved for salaries, all right? All contracts are settled right now, as you heard the mayor say, so it's now retirements. It's an estimate, all right? If we give them half of what he's asking for, we have a whole boatload of money in employment, in salary line items that folks aren't hired yet, right? Again, this all factors into what do you want the taxes to be, and if you want it lower, here's your opportunity. Fire department, I still think, you know, if we give the chief everything, it's, you know, that means that's the baseline for starting next year. Reducing 50,000 with the amount of over $700,000 overtime budget, again, you heard the open positions. What do? They move money from the salary line items to overtime to cover it. Library, I agree with Councilor Roby. It's kind of a foolishness, but to me, I don't think we're allowed to approve an item. I mean, we can put something in the notes that say pending approval of the salary ordinance before June 30th, which would be fine. Capital projects, again, we did it last year. We zeroed out that line item. Zeroing out that line item, and I'll be candid, it's me, working cooperatively with the mayor is good. When you're not working cooperatively with the mayor, it's difficult to say, go ahead and take that money and do what you want. You don't need any council approval. Zeroing that out means he has to come back to the council for free cash and tell us what he's doing. I don't know why that's a bad thing, and it's not. We all know that. But we all know our mayor, which is fine. And we all love our mayor. Solid waste, you heard the commissioner tell us during finance that we could reduce, that reductions could be coming. So to me, level funding that is just that's acceptable. MWA water, that adjustment, I'll defer to Councilor Navin. If what the mayor is saying is correct, again, I don't have any of that basis numbers. I'm just hearing it for the first time, which he knows aggravates me no end. Could he be right? I guess he is. I'm assuming he is, but I don't have any numbers to validate what he said. So I'm willing to let that one go if the council's, Councilor Navin agrees. He knows that assessments are assessments and they are usually on the high side early on, but I'll defer to him to see if that's of value.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The pressure's on. You know, I'm not sure what the flag was for an ethical problem about talking about our budget with the water that we pay for, but I'll take a crack at what I know to be factually true. The MWRA in February sends a preliminary assessment out to each of its member communities, letting them know that based on previous year's usage, what they can expect for a bill. They, much like the City of Marlborough, are currently going through their budget cycle and their budget process, which takes into consideration months of work and collaboration with the MWRA Advisory Board, which is represented by the cities and towns that pay a major amount of the freight. So what we received is the preliminary assessment so that cities and towns can go forward and build their budgets off of it. This starts every February and then, it'll get done in June. So we don't know, as the president pointed out, the number is higher, right? The preliminary assessment for, this year that the City of Marlborough received was an increase of $401,386. But certain communities have other things that they also do with that. And so if there are, I know the city, as the mayor noted, adds pH and a couple of other chemicals at the pump station right next to the Carroll Water Treatment Plant, there are added costs. I think it might be a little bit easier to see that if it were broken out a little bit better. I think that'd probably be my only comment there, because the line item just says MWRA water, and the price for the water is a different number than what is there. Again, we're obviously going to pay our bills, but it's always I guess, a nice idea to make sure that the water wholesaler or anybody who is coming for their bills shows that there's adequate money in there. So not knowing what the actual cost of the chemicals are going to be, and knowing that in this current economic climate, the cost of chemicals are fluctuating at best, I'm fine with that. I hope that's helpful, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It helps me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm happy to.
Thank you. I mean, again, over the 2 evenings, I definitely support funding for the assistant clerk and the clerk, putting that into the budget. I fully support that. The water line item, after hearing the explanation, I wouldn't be for that. The overtime for the fire department, I probably wouldn't be for that. My question is, and I'm with Council Roby, on the library positions, because I definitely want them, but President Ossing is 100% correct. Without a salary ordinance, it doesn't give us the ability to do that. But I am with Council Roby on that, because I do want those positions funded. And I'm okay with the, eliminating the reserve for salaries, the electricity. I'm okay with those things, and President Ossing is right. We'll be moving funds around, transferring, so I'm okay with that. I'm still hesitant on how we're going to add the clerk and the assistant clerk in there. But I'm for that.
If I can.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It's a motion by this council to ask the mayor to submit a supplemental budget to put those 2 line items, one to adjust and one to add. Just like he did last year, if you go to the year-end supplement, he added in the assessors.
The assessors,
yes. Same exact thing. He submitted he'll again, if he's playing nice, he'll submit a letter, a supplemental budget on the next agenda to add those back in, if that's what the wish of the Finance Committee is.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Orm.
Thank you, and thank you all for staying late last night. Sorry I suggested that idea, but oh well. We made it through, and I'm glad the department heads, who I felt did a great job on the budget presentations, deserve to probably be home tonight. It was a long night for them, and to make them go home at the very end would have been, in my view, not a nice thing to do. So I'm glad we got through at least all our department heads. I agree with Councilor Ossing, President Ossing, as it relates to putting an attachment to the library staff that are the new position. I think it's important to do that. I think we can do that as a Finance Committee vote and wait for the full council vote. As it relates to reserve for salaries, I don't have a problem reducing that to $100,000. I think that's fair. Capital projects, I don't have a problem with that. I'd like to know what's happening as well, so I have no problem with capital projects reducing that $300,000. As it relates to the energy, I'm a little bit tilted one way or the other, because energy's going up when we see it, and even with the change in the economy, I don't think it's going to go down in a great degree, especially electricity and gas. Maybe the gasoline at the pump is not a good gauge to utilize, but unfortunately, I just don't see those as being changeable. I think our department heads did their research, especially DPW director. I thought his presentation was appropriate. But again, I know Councilor Ossing has a handle on some of the energy issues out there, so I'll hold off on that and maybe reconsider. But those, the $400,000 I'm suggesting, as it relates to reserve for salaries, I always like to see if there's issues that we can come back to that, and if they need to come to the council, that's a good thing. Same with the capital. So those would be my concerns, and the attachment to the budget as it relates to the library position. Outside of that, I want to thank everyone here for staying late last night, but I think our department heads appreciated it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman Irish. After reviewing the proposed budget adjustments that President Ossing had, for the first 2 items, I definitely support the requesting the supplemental budget from the mayor to have those items added back in, and then the adjustments for the assistant commissioner, electricity, reserve for salaries, gross overtime, the capital projects and solid waste. I also support those. The library positions, I support with the verbiage of the pending ordinance. And then after what Councilor Navin had said, I agree with you, Chairman Irish, about I would leave the money in for that line item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Cronin.
Thank you, Chair Irish. I also support the adjustments for the city clerk and the elections. That seems like something that if we are going to go through and vote on certain things, particularly, I'd like to get that out of the way.
I was going to suggest that next while it's in our mind.
Yeah, can I make a motion to request that the mayor add a supplemental budget that includes the additional 4590 for the assistant clerk, account number 50290, and then the additional adding back in of the position that was deleted under account number 50140 clerk for an additional 17,600. I have some other comments, but I figured we should get that out of the way.
Get that out of the way so we get that language correct. I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes 5-0.
Okay, and on that, Chair Irish, is that something, I know President Ossing mentioned it could happen quickly, but we would not anticipate by our next meeting?
I'm sorry, what's it?
I'm sorry, Council Perlman?
I was just saying, I know you mentioned that the mayor would do that quickly, given what's happened last year. Are we anticipating that this could show up even on the upcoming agenda, or unclear?
I would anticipate it, but I will, defer to the auditor, but, it's not a hard request. And we saw how fast it was turned around last year for something he wanted. I would hope he would work with the council on this one.
Okay, well, I just wanted to clarify that. And then just another, I know it was mentioned around the library and having additional language to support that the positions we want, but we want more information. I know we were sent an email with attachments that we have printed that had, at least from my understanding, the head of adult services salary ordinance is the issue that it hasn't come properly before the council for review and then approval with the advertisement. Is that the?
That is
Okay.
correct, Mr. President.
That is correct, Council Perlman. It's got to get officially sent to the council so that we can officially advertise it. We don't do stuff by emails. That's usually not a recipe for success.
Yes, it's definitely difficult to get things, last minute. So I would support these positions once it's gone through the process. I think we even heard yesterday how quickly the library want to get up and running, so I wouldn't want to delay these positions, but I do want it to be reviewed by the council.
That's how I feel too.
So to Councilor Perlman's point, in that supplemental budget request that the Finance Committee just approved, the assistant clerk and the elections part-time clerk, add in to submit the salary ordinance for the library, the two positions, the adult services and program outreach coordinator, and then we don't have to touch that right now. And then if we vote, whenever we vote on the budget, if stuff doesn't come down, we can make that adjustment then. But this gives the mayor the opportunity, we're willing to work with them to, submit the salary ordinances for those positions.
Okay, well, I can make that motion because I also just want to make sure the library has it moving. So I would make a motion that within the supplemental budget request that we already put forth for the city clerk and the elections part-time position, that we also put in the request for the ordinances for the salary to come down for the head adult services position 50475, as well as the program outreach coordinator 50478.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Council Perlman.
Sorry, just to move us, I know everyone's been here a while. The question I had, I know last night, and Councilor Roby brought this up, so forgive me if I don't have the exact numbers, but I thought it was helpful. When we were going through the police budget around the overtime, it came up around, it was reduced to overtime court time, but that it wasn't fully used within the budget. I know, Councilor Roby, if maybe you could reshare some of what you mentioned yesterday, but I know there's a suggestion to cut the gross overtime for the fire department, so I was also thinking about the police department as well, because it didn't seem like it was used. I know some court is still happening remotely. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and that is correct when Chief Georgia mentioned that. Also, the concern too, well, the concern is too, possible retirement and fully staffing. That was some of the issues that I believe that the chief had mentioned.
And I guess I would argue again, based on what we did last year, police were reduced by $60,000. No, I'm sorry.
No, we didn't
We
reduce.
tried to reduce
Yes,
it.
yes.
And then we actually took 60,000 from the budget because we needed it somewhere else. That was for police. For fire, they added money, but he still has money in the budget. So to me, it seemed like both of those were, I didn't come up with a number because I'm not on finance, but I would think that both of them could be reduced and maybe make up the difference from the MWRA money.
Yeah, I know that came up yesterday. I'm in support of a reduction, just I know overtime was a big discussion at the meeting yesterday in all of the departments, and just given that that line item wasn't fully utilized and money was transferred from it, it would make sense to reduce it. I can propose a number, but if anyone else has thoughts on that, just given that it doesn't seem like a heavily utilized line item. And we know, as Councilor President Ossing has mentioned, that if they need more money in that line item, they can come back to us. I know overtime is high across the city, and we have all these new staff members coming on board, which is very exciting, so hopefully it won't be utilized.
I mean, I fully understand. I still have some concerns, only because it could be staffing and things of that nature, but Councilor Roby, I understand where she's coming with the numbers. I just feel that there could be some issues going forward.
Yeah, I would just only add, there is a separate line item that already says overtime regular. So they are separated as different funding. There's overtime regular, overtime cell watch, and overtime court time. And so I'm referring to 51320 overtime court time. So that doesn't touch regular overtime.
Right, they reduced it already.
Right. But she was saying from last year's budget that they didn't use all of that money even with that reduction. Is that correct? I couldn't get my laptop open, so.
We took $60,000 from the $206,900 that's in the budget. They've only spent $81,000. So there's money left in this year, which to me indicates that we should be able to reduce it. We could take the whole $60,000 that it's been increased by, or something less, but.
Are you talking about the police or the fire?
Police overtime.
Because now
for court.
Now the police budget came in with one of the least increases.
Right, but what I'm saying is that based on this year, where we took money from the line item, and still what's left, they haven't spent all of it. There's money left over, and as the chief said, you never know from year to year what's happening with the court and police needing to go to court. And as everybody has said, we never not have money to transfer for departments that need funds if they don't have it in their budget. So I still think I would be comfortable. I'm not on finance, but.
Councilor?
No, just on that same line item 51320. Okay, so they cut it by 60,000. They're showing that they haven't spent last year's, and they're proposing $146,900. What's the suggested cut? I'm not suggesting. I'm just curious if there is a suggested cut. What is it?
I did not hear a number.
I didn't either.
I hadn't put forth a number. I just brought it up because I know Councilor Roby had raised it and I had made a note about it. So I just think if we're also looking at the fire department gross overtime, and this came up as a line item that wasn't utilized, it would be another way to reduce the budget, given what we've already discussed.
Last year, the suggested reduction was 50,000.
That is correct.
So I would support the 50,000 reduction, just given that that's also what we're saying we're doing for the fire department, so that is equal. So I can make a motion and therefore can open discussion if people want to talk about it. So I would move to reduce the 51320 overtime court time by 50,000.
Do I hear a second on that?
146.
Not carried.
I'll second it. I'm just curious how the
Okay,
vote will carry.
Second by Council.
Because it's a third, and that's what I was looking at. It could be rounded down to 100,000. We could cut 46,900.
Okay,
but-
46,900.
So you don't have to do
No,
that. I'm
that's a
just-
good point. I wasn't looking
Yeah.
at that. So that would be,
But, again, I want to respect the department head, the police chief. Obviously noted he's having trouble getting staff, but I do like the point that was made that this is for court overtime, not for other overtime. So unfortunately, if he does have trouble with court officers, then it will become a problem. Then he'll probably have to come back. But I think that's a reasonable suggestion based on the fact it has a label court overtime. So it's that position. It's usually one or two people that fill that position that I remember.
Well, it's my understanding it's the officer that served the ticket.
Well, I believe then they sent it to the court officer, but that's okay. Sorry, Katie. Counsel Roby, I'm sorry. But I don't know if it's changed, but all the police officers would send their cases to the court officer. I used to know one of them in the past. He's retired, but maybe they all go on their own at this point. I don't know.
Councilor Landers.
I do, quite honestly, I have some reservation about that. I think the chief mentioned last night that, it does vary from year to year. And ordinarily, I like to look at the past year to see how much. But, we're just coming off the past year. And as you know, a lot of court cases were continued. Police officers, and I hear it all the time in the scanner, don't report because so-and-so can't show and stuff like that. So, I don't know, I don't see the value there of, court overtime, of, having it back. Because if they don't use it, it goes into free cash next year anyways, right? That's, doing budgets for so many years in the school department, I don't think you want to build up a budget because it doesn't affect the tax rate. But, I don't worry about court overtime, some of those items there. Because if they don't use it, someone down that station there figured out approximately, how much they think they need for, FY '24. I don't know, I don't think it's good. As I say, ordinarily, I like to look at the past year on some things, but that's kind of an unknown. We're coming off the pandemic. I think there's more court cases. The lawyers are busier than ever, and so making money. So I don't know. I'm not on finance.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Council Wagner. Council Wagner.
Thank you. I'd just like to add in, given that it's Ward 1 and it's my backyard and I spend a lot of time in the Marlborough State Forest, I would like to just raise that up too for the fire department. I'm really concerned with the direction, what the extreme weather pattern changes that we're getting, and the fact that the water is so dried up back there and there's so much dead wood. I'm concerned that we easily could burn through that 50,000 plus some. So cutting that just seems short-sighted given what we expect our emergency services to do and the conditions back there. I would be happy to take anybody for a walk through those woods, but the changes back there are really concerning. And I think if you don't see it regularly, you forget it, and it's easy to think, oh, we probably won't use that. Here it was saying if we need it, we're gonna have to find it somewhere, but I have a lot of concern that we're going to need that and some this year from them. So I just deferring to our expertise. We have an amazing police chief and fire chief, and I feel cutting bits on their budget right now. I just doesn't feel like we are supporting them the way we should.
Thank you, Council Wagner. Councilor Dumas?
Sure. Thank you. So to go back to the court overtime, I can understand and respect the concern because there was a transfer of $60,000 that was out of the account, transferred out for this year. which also brings it back down to the 146, which is in the budget. So, and they only have used about 55%, I believe, of their budget for this year. So that would make sense, but I would also, I guess I'm piggybacking because I brought up the admin for our city council, that percentage, we've only used 40% of that line item. So if we're willing to cut other budgets, I think that we need to look inside as well as our own budget as well. It's nothing personal against our admin, but there is a slight 2% increase. But yet we're only using 40%. And there's only 2 months left. So if we're looking at the percentages of where we're cutting, I think that we also should look at our own budget as well. So just food for thought for you. I know it's a minimal. I know we're talking like 50,000 compared to like maybe 3,000. However, it's the principle and the perception that we'll let our budget slide, but yeah, we're going to attack every other line item. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the numbers. But that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. Good point. Oh, sorry, Councilor Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Irish. My opinion of this is, after reviewing the police chief's narrative and proposed budget, I feel like it looks to me like he did a lot of work and kept his budget really from exceeding what it was last year. It's really not much different. And that line item, it was already reduced by 60,000. So me personally, I would continue to have it in the budget. I wouldn't remove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Orm, did you have a question?
Yes. Sorry, yes. I'm glad I seconded it for discussion. Hearing from the local councilor was very important as well. So on the fire OT, I feel the same way. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm very happy that our department heads presented the way they did. So I could go either way, but because of the fact that I trust our department heads, and it was mentioned by another counselor, they don't spend it, it goes to free cash, but the one thing that resonates in my mind is when the police chief or someone else talked about our needs in the city, including for a social worker, and the various reasons why we need a social worker. So I'm hoping next year maybe, when we look at court overtime, we might see a reduction in the need to go to court with the additional services such as a social worker. So when it does come for a vote, I'll probably vote no in the respect to cutting it. But based on giving the police department a chance to see how social workers will work and other interventions that hopefully will reduce crime and not increase it. So just my reasoning, and the reasoning on the fire, definitely I agree with Council Wagner. This climate change has caused for drastic long periods of rain and then drastic dry periods. Or if you're in California at Lake Tahoe, drastic snowfalls. You know, it's going to be a busy year, I think, for our emergency service personnel in that respect.
Motion has been made and seconded by Councilor Orm. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Wait, point of information. What is the motion again? Sorry.
To reduce the police overtime court time
Thank you.
line item. We did derail in conversation around some other items, so people might have gotten confused, but good always to have discussion.
Absolutely. All in favor of the reduction?
Support my own motion.
All opposed? Doesn't carry. On that note, do we want to go also to the 51300 for the fire department? While we were in discussions with that, should we tackle that one now as well?
Does it require a motion?
No. It was brought up that was something that someone may have wanted to make a motion on.
I didn't hear the question. I didn't hear the first part of the question, I'm sorry.
So we just left for the police department overtime for the courts. It was also mentioned at the same time, 50,000 for the overtime in the fire department.
Okay.
We might as well look at that item now too and then take a vote. Councilor.
Mr. Chair, I would ask if it lacks a motion. You know, I don't know, but it may lack a motion after the previous discussion, but I'm not planning to motion for additional discussion.
Mr. Chair, it's real simple. Just ask if there's no support, just move on. So is there any motion to support it? If not, move on to the next item.
Move on. Thank you, Ms. Red.
We got to ask them that first.
No, so they,
I
further
motion.
discussion to move on with that?
I will motion to support the 50,000 less for gross overtime for fire department.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, what was the motion? To reduce? I couldn't hear the
50
motion.
To reduce by 50,000. That.
Okay, thank you.
It's a 20% increase, and they have 57% of their accounts still available.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We're talking about 51300, correct?
Correct, for 50,000.
So the fiscal year 22 actual was over 700,000. So I see it as reflecting more of the reality between 22 to project for 24. Unfortunately, we don't know what they've done so far in 23. So we can only see the actual of 22, what the budget was for 23. So I think that, if we cut it, they'll come back and ask for a transfer. So I'm just going to make that as an observation, because it looks like that's the rate that they're doing it. And until they get reasonable staffing with training and all that, there's still going to be lots of overtime in the fire department.
Okay. Councilor.
Councilor, so just a point of order regarding our end of April accounting. The additional gross was approved for last year for 582,177. They transferred 80,000 in, which then left them a budget of 662. They've used 379,000, which leaves them 282. There's only 2 months left. I think 50,000 is not that unreasonable to cut. Just my 2 cents.
President Austin.
So not on the Finance Committee, but Council Dumas is correct. The run rate for the fire department overtime for the year is around $41,000 a month. Just staying run rate. So they're going to end the year with, unless they do something different, which they can, but they're going to have extra money left over this year. And again, Council Doucette, you pointed out correctly, it's a 20% increase in overtime. And my fear with that, having all that overtime is I prefer our guys not have to work overtime. I mean, it's not a way to run long-term. But short-term fix, not a long-term fix.
And they're also able to find $80,000 to transfer in the last 10 months.
Motion been made. Oh, Councilor.
Yes, on the motion, again, I will reiterate, and I'm not hoping for any serious issues. But again, if they don't use the money, there's the other argument, it'll go into free cash. So, especially in a safety department, I cannot support reducing this based on the concerns of wildfires, the concerns of other issues that could happen. I mean, it's just not wildfires. So with this said, if they don't use it in the run rate, I agree, but that's not with the exceptional issue like a brush fire. That for that reason I cannot support it. I, again, put my trust in the fire chief for the way he presented and the needs. And it is unfortunate, and it's not just in Marlborough, but finding safety personnel, might it be police or fire, is not an easy task. And more important, people are retiring. So with that, unfortunately, and I agree with Councilor Ossing, President Ossing, it's not the way you should run a department on OT. You shouldn't. But unfortunately, presently, the circumstances are there that it's difficult to find personnel. So with that said, I'm going to just be voting no.
So the motion has been made in, Councilor.
Yeah, just another point of discussion. So I feel like the wildfire point was well taken about the needs for some of the fire department. I guess in my mind, I don't see why this is different than the other cut that I had made earlier, because they're both not running at the amount. So I just think the discussion's interesting, that it's people want to support this cut but not the other one, where I think in general both overtimes we should be cautious of. So I just put that out there because the discussion has shifted, but they're both overtime that are not running at the amount that we originally allocated for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman Irish. The way that I was looking at these line items and the difference between the police line items and the fire line items for me is just the way that they're broken down with the police budget. There are, the way they have their line items broken down, that court time one, it's, I don't remember what page it was on. I apologize. So I'm just gonna go off the cuff a little bit. What was it? 59. Oh. Oh, that's the fire. Okay, so on 56, so they have overtime regular, which is proposed to be funded at $330,000, overtime cell watch, which is proposed to be $9,000, and then overtime court time, which was proposed at $146,900, which is a reduction of $60,000 from the current fiscal year. So the fire item, it's more lumped as one item. So they do have vehicle maintenance as a $48,817 item, but their gross overtime is $700,000. For the current fiscal year, it was $582,177, and as Councilor Dumas had said, that's an increase of 20.24. So the difference in how I'm looking at the two, it really is just how the line items are separated out. So that's my explanation there.
All right. Councilwoman?
Just if we can, for just history, and that was a good point, Council Brown. When you go back to FY '22, they spent on overtime, $702,577. So, again, it can vary. You know, I'm glad we know the run rate around 40, 41, but it can vary a bit depending on their work.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to reduce account number 51300, overtime for the fire department, by $50,000. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? It carries 3-2. Good work. Okay, moving down. Any other ones right now that we see? I know I'm comfortable with the electricity, reserve for salaries. Council Brown.
Sure, Iris, just because I feel like this was brought up and I'm comfortable with it. I don't think we voted on the capital projects item. I'm comfortable reducing it by the $300,000. I think it's really important when the mayor does come down and give updates to the council that we have that discussion. This was mentioned by President Ossing, and so I would make a motion to reduce line item 58595, City Hall equipment, by the $300,000 as we have done before.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made. Motion's been made and seconded to reduce the City Hall equipment capital projects 58595 by $300,000. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Finance team have any other suggestions? Councilor Dumas?
Councilor Roby brought to my attention that the substance abuse coordinator was funded at 61,550.06, and so that is a step 4. I don't think that we can hire at a step 4, seeing how it's a new position. So I would like to eliminate some of the funding for that. Step 1 is at 58,000. Step 2 is at 59,160. If we were to eliminate it to the position as a step 1, it'll be $33,550.06. I don't know if the mayor decides to do it at step 2, but we can always ask for a supplemental. But I think step 1 would probably be sufficient as of right now. But we cannot approve something at step 4 because we cannot hire at a step 4 for a new position.
Council Wagner?
Am I hearing that correctly, just for point of clarification? Are you saying that you think we should be hiring an MSW, a Master's in Social Work, for full-time for $31,000? Is that what you're saying you think it should be funded as?
Step 1 would be 58,000. We can only hire someone at a step 1 based upon our salary ordinance. Our salary ordinance for a substance abuse coordinator was, step one is 58,000, based upon what we approved.
And if I can just throw out a point of order, if the mayor chooses to hire them at a step 2,
Yeah.
he can come and ask for a transfer.
Correct.
Or-
Council?
I'd be careful on that, you know. I think we hired someone.
We did.
Person left the next day.
Yeah.
I bet she probably went home and said, "No, that's not a hell of a lot of money, so gone." You know, we've experienced this in Marlborough, that some of our pay rates aren't where they should be.
Right.
Now we're gonna talk about how important this position is.
Right. No,
I mean, nickel and diming it?
No, what-
I can't see that.
Point of information, we can only allocate the funds based upon the salary ordinance that was already approved upon. We can't order a budget line item for a step 4 because we can't hire at a step 4. We have to follow the salary ordinance that was already approved. I would love to give them more money. However, we as a body cannot. We can only allocate what was already approved in the salary ordinance, which was 58,000 for step 1, or step 2 at 59,160. We cannot hire at a step 2 as a city council. That has to come from the mayor's office.
But if I can point out, though, that salary ordinance needs a 2% added to it because we approved that for fiscal year '23. So I believe it would, for fiscal year '24, that first number should go up 2%. So it should go to whatever step 2 says, I think. If we're getting it down to a...
I'm fine with the number, but we can't approve this at the
Correct.
61,550. That's the point that I'm just trying
Yeah,
to make.
no.
Councilor David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the points that are made by Councilor Dumas. I would just say that, you know, it doesn't seem like we're talking about a whole heck of a lot of money between step 1 and step 2. And so if it's that's going to give the mayor the ability to actually get someone in to take the job, I would say that, you know, giving it to the statutory authority we have given to him, you know, would probably be the best to try and get somebody in here. So if it's that, I would be supportive, you know, when it came to the council, you know, for it to be a step 2. But, you know, it's certainly an appropriate cut to reduce it from step 4, which we have no ability to pay. So that money would just be sitting in that account when it could be sitting in free cash. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I motion to approve the substance abuse prevention coordinator, intervention specialist at a step 2, whatever, plus whatever percentage increase needs to be for fiscal year '24.
Mr. Chair, do we have the exact amount and what the difference is from what was presented?
Well, with the step increase, I don't know what that would calculate to.
Could we ask the auditor to clarify if we approved a salary ordinance in 2022?
That's right.
23.
When was that approved?
Order number started 22.
Everything got a 2%.
I'm just not prepared to speak on what the number should be. When we put these budgets together, payroll calculated all the salaries for all the positions. So I would think that the number before you is the proper number as to where if the person that we hired was still in the position, that is what that person would be making next fiscal year. I don't have anything in front of me, though, to...
Right, but if we
to
go
back up
back
this
to a
number.
brand-new hire, starting on July 1st, we would go back to step 1 of the salary ordinance that we approved, but that salary ordinance
Adding
needs a
2%.
2% increase.
Right, correct.
So technically, it would be step 2, I believe. Those were done at 2% increases.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. President?
if I could make a suggestion to the council, you can ask for what the actual step 2 salary, if that's what the plan is, and then when this comes again, when the finance chair reports it out and it comes in the hands of the council, you can make that adjustment then. But I'll tell you, you're in the $1,000 range. It's not, I don't know, I mean, unless you, it's hard to make that decision without knowing. I mean, other than say, gonna approve it at step 2, and I don't know what step 2 is.
Yeah, I don't know what step 2 is.
Yeah, and, oh, sorry, go ahead. No.
Clarification question too, is it, and I apologize if I haven't seen this clarified, could something else be included in there, like if this person's getting, I don't know, a stipend for mileage since they're gonna be traveling, is that, this line has to be totally just salary? Okay, thanks.
To my knowledge. Councilwoman?
Mr. Chair, I would just go with the number that's presented after just hearing from Diane about, you know, how these were set. And when you look at FY '22 and then you look at percent increases, it's probably going to be in that range, but I think clarification on the step is valid. But at this point, I am not in favor of reducing the $61,500 in the Board of Health line item 50607.
Mr. Chair, if I can point out, she was talking about a person currently in the position and then getting a step and then getting an increase. That position is now vacant. So we would go back to step 1.
I agree. Step 2 needs to be reduced.
We can find out what the exact number is. I'll be happy to take it up when it's at the full council level.
Just a point of information, so if does someone repeat what we would need to vote on today to make sure that we are abiding by the salary ordinance correctly and that it's in the budget? If there was a 2% increase, but also making sure it's at the right step. So what would the motion be? I just want to make sure. I know Councilor Roby's not on the Finance Committee, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
There's a motion on the table to approve this position at step 2.
Is there a second?
Yeah, is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to start that at step 2. Any further discussion? Councilwoman?
Again, I want to know what the money is attached to that, so I'm not prepared to vote for it at this point. I see the number in the budget.
Yes.
And that's what I'm prepared to vote for.
Correct. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make clarification, because the number is 61,500.
Yes.
We would only vote to reduce that number, not to increase it. That's correct.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood the direction this is going, so, okay. And do we know if that's what step the 61,500 is for?
That we do not.
No. So we don't
The
even know.
salary ordinance that we approved has step 1 at $58,000.
Correct.
That needs a 2% increase on it,
Yeah, thank you.
which would get it up to no, that's not right.
59,160.
6.
I'm sorry, Counselor.
If you said it was a $58,000 salary and you're going to give a 2% increase, it's 59,160.
Thank you, which is what I thought the math was for step 2, so.
And if you do 2 of them, it's 60,343. And it's 61,000, okay.
Motion's been made. Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Chairman Irish. I just have a question to make sure I understand the vote that we're about to take. Voting in favor of starting the position at step 2, is that voting in favor of hiring at step 1, but allowing the mayor to make the move to step 2?
No, he would have to send down something to
Yeah.
the council. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it would have that?
Because we
I just want to make sure, based on what Councilors Roby and Dumas had said, that we're just within the stipulations of what the ordinance states.
We don't know if it's what step. Councilor Brown?
And then just to reiterate what would happen at the council meeting, I agree that we should follow the ordinance. I also agree that this seems underfunded, and I know it was mentioned the person left for other reasons, but it's not a very high salary, and we have spent a lot of time talking about this position at another meeting, so I just want to make sure that I'm voting reflects that I want this to be in alignment with the salary ordinance, but I also support the mayor looking at this, and I don't know if that exists in a supplemental budget or it has to be something that we do at the full council, but that this is not a sustainable salary for this person.
Motion is made and seconded.
We just approved this, so we set this salary ordinance.
And the night that we did set
Yesterday,
this all up, it was a lot to go through, with that said. And in the future, with with the legislators and getting some more money from the opioids lawsuits, we're going to get more funding, but it was brought up back then that it was on the low end. And it's just where we're at right now. Council Wagner?
Is it possible, hearing what was said, that HR did go through all these, I'm concerned with, is there something we don't know? Why is it 61.5? And so is it possible for this committee to maybe let this one go forward without a recommendation to get this moving tonight? And then when we get an answer to, was it a mistake or is there something we don't know? Why is it 61.5? Then we can have that information when the council votes.
So, Mr. Chairman, yes, you can, but then you got to withdraw the motion to reduce it to start at step 2. It's the counselor that made the motions, because right now you got a motion in front of you to act on.
I'm fine withdrawing the motion. If you guys don't see that it's fit, then I'm fine with it. My concern is that we're allocating funds at the wrong step. That's it. You know, I understand the dollar amounts very low. I understand all that, but we have an ordinances for reasons, so we can follow them. We approve them, we change them, we have to abide by them. That's my only concern, is I just want to follow the rules and regulations that we actually set forth.
So, Councilor Dumas'
I'm happy to withdraw.
Withdraw his motion.
So I think there'll
Have a
be
new motion.
I'm happy just to leave it and move on. Like it can die. I just want to make that observation that.
No, absolutely, and we can get back to the mayor and Director Garsile and see what they're doing. I would like to.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what direction the rest of the council wants to go, but I would hope that someone would make motions and they can go up or down, whatever the council feels, with the remaining items, beginning with the assistant commissioner,
yes,
electricity, reserve for salaries, and solid waste, and I'll concede the MWRA.
Absolutely, and a good point, Mr. President, because I do want to move forward, because I do support a lot of these good measures to go forward. So yes, I'd like to just move forward.
Mr. Chair?
Councilor.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the reserve for salaries by $100,000. Unfortunately, I got to look up the number, but it is on page 54 if you want me to get the number. The line item. It's still the same. 57820. Thank you, Katie.
You wanted to, because all contracts have been settled, so we can actually go higher on that amount.
True.
So you ask if there's a second.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded to reduce reserve for salaries, line item 57820. Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
How much was the reduction amount?
100,000.
100,000?
100,000. I'm level funding it from
Level funding?
where it
Okay.
was before.
Okay.
Oh, Councilor Brown, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Irish. I would not be in support of the $100,000 reduction. I would be in support of President Ossing's original proposed reduction of $300,000 on that line item.
Thank you, Councilor Brown.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilor.
So if we are looking at, I'm on the page now, if we're looking at 300,000, then that would bring it, well, actual in FY '22 was 1 million. So I know I've heard both sides of this, the free cash versus, having a healthy free cash limit or going back into free cash. It's one way or the other, but that is a hefty reduction compared to what it was utilized in FY '22. It was budgeted in FY '23.
But if I could.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So just as a point of information, Councilor, FY '22, those monies were for settling contracts. So we didn't have contracts then. This money is for presumed retirements that may or may not happen. And I go back to the underruns and all the salary items that can cover, again, we're $793,000 under in salary right now, and that doesn't count all the money that was taken. We were over 1.3 million back in March prior to the mid-year transfers. But there are no contracts left. This is all purely what the administration thinks are going to retire. They may or they may not.
So with that said, I'll stay with my 100,000, but we'll see where that motion goes, if it gets seconded or not.
Motion was made and, was there a second?
I think I originally seconded
did,
it, and we
thank
were
you.
currently in discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded to reduce reserve for salaries by $100,000. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so it does not carry.
On another motion for 300,000.
Motion has been made, and I'll second that, to reduce the line item 5782, reserve for salaries, by $300,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. All right, so that's that. Okay, I know one of the touchy subjects as well was the line item for electricity. Certainly good points back and forth, but that's something that, as a council, we've focused on the last couple of years. Is any motion on moving forward with that line item?
Motion to approve the deduction of 100,000 for electricity.
Motion's been made, and I will second that, to reduce $100,000 from 52120, the electricity. Any further discussion? Councilwoman?
Thank you. I know we brought this up yesterday, but maybe President Austin could shed some light on this exact number. Is it, I know we did the back and forth around how we don't know the predictions, but if there's just a little bit more context given the comments that you put already.
Sure, no, the mayor's correct. We're bringing on a new building, but I will argue that that new building was there. It's going to be a little larger, but that building and the Walker building was still in play prior. The increases are to the supply side of the bill, which is half the bill, not the entire bill. Is electricity prices going up? Yep. As Councilor Wagner will tell you, we're struggling right now with the municipal aggregation side. It's going to be, we're looking at a similar type increase. I still think, as my esteemed colleague, Councilor Oram, did 3 or 4 years ago, reduce $400,000 from electricity and challenge the departments to conserve energy. I still think that's a mantra we need to go down. I mean, there are opportunities to still say, just because we used it last year tells me we didn't do anything to help save electricity this year. So I still think there are opportunities there, and that's kind of the challenge. And again, if it goes over, what happens? We transfer money that we move around, right? They'll take it from free cash, they'll move it from underruns in other departments. I go back to immediate transfers, 1.6 million, internal transfers, 900,000, year-end transfers. Don't have it, Diane may tell me, but it's gonna be close to $1 million, probably 1.7 alone just for snow and ice. And then we're running almost $800,000 under in salary. That's $6 million that, if you want to score how well we did, we got wrong. But it's not a bad thing. We still got to operate a budget, and we never know how it's going to go. You heard the mayor say, it's the best estimate at this time. Does the world fall apart if you reduce the money? No. Sun still comes up, everything gets funded, we do just fine. So, it's your call. I mean, if you support it, great. If not, it's okay. We'll go on to the next line item. So whatever I hope that helps, Councilor Perlman.
Yes, it does. I just wanted, yesterday was a long meeting, so it's always good to refresh before we vote on an item, so thank you.
All right, so a motion has been made and seconded to reduce the electricity line item 52120, account description rather, by $100,000. All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Mr. Chair, with the note, hopefully they'll get into more conservation and more additional programs to reduce use of energy.
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Doucette?
Yeah, I'd also like to, I was disappointed with the DPW who came in here. I asked him if there's any renewable energy projects on the horizon, and he said no. And under the prior administration, there was, the intent of renewable energy projects is that you always have something in the pipeline. Something's getting deployed, you're planning to do the next one, etc. There's no plans for new renewable energy projects, and that is a way to definitely impact our heating and electricity usage by using more capturing more energy that's within the city versus having it imported from other parts of the world.
Good point. Okay, moving on. Finance team, Council Perlman.
And just to clarify, I think we have the solid waste and the water fund remaining, so I would make a motion to do the reduction of the 86,000 of 52935 solid waste disposal.
And that's by 86,000.
Correct.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reduce the solid waste disposal, account number 52935, by $86,000. Any further, Councilor?
I just want a second to go to page 143 and just so the reduction is for the amount that it was increased by the 86, the 4.5% increase. And yeah, page 143.
143.
And with that, I can't remember what you said. What was the reason for the increase? Like you said, Council Perlman, it was a long night last night. Do we remember what he stated for that increase, or did he even touch that? He being the DPW commissioner, did he touch that?
Yeah, he did.
I'm happy to help. So
thank you.
He indicated he thought prices, costs may go up, but he also mentioned that it's based on usage.
Correct.
And as you saw this year, we transferred out $475,000 because they weren't using all the solid waste stuff. Could we have a rush on solid waste? I don't know. I mean, that's,
yeah,
but,
understandable.
This year, no. I mean, he was able to return money. So that's why I'm saying if it's level funded, okay, and if he needs money, we'll find him money. I mean, they'll find it, but.
Yeah, and I agree with the council president. The estimates concerned me yesterday, estimates versus, I mean, the department heads, as I said, they did a great job, but some of it was kind of I hate to say the word fuzzy math, but it was estimates. I'll leave it at that. So I would be in favor of the 86,000 reduction to level funded.
All right, so motion's been made and seconded to reduce that solid waste disposal by $86,000. All in favor? It carries 5-0. That was 86,000.
And then Chair Irish, I'd make a motion to reduce line item 52320, water MWRA, by the $90,545.
Thank you, Council President. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to reduce the water MWRA line item by $90,000, $545. Any discussion? Seeing none?
I'll just.
Oh,
real
thank you,
quick,
Mr. President.
so I will to offer the council a permanent dumas, though I agree with reducing it. I will yield to my MWRA smart guy.
That's what I
thinking
did.
That the additional funds, though I acknowledge they don't match the assessment that we have.
Yes.
And I'm taking the mayor on his word, because I don't have anything in front of us, that the additional $14,000 and $75,000 for additional funding is required.
Councilor David.
And to be clear, right, because it's confusing, right, and I just want to be clear, it does not match our preliminary assessment, and it does not, unless there is a tremendous coincidence, it's not going to match what the final assessment's going to be, but each community does have to, to make sure that their water quality, is correct for the infrastructure and the, the places that it's going. Sometimes that does require that, so I would also suggest that perhaps in future years and future administrations, maybe that can get broken out so that it could be very clear what we're actually paying to the authority,
Makes sense.
what we're actually paying to procure chemicals to add to our own water source as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Very good point. All right, so motion has been made and seconded to reduce the water MWRA by $90,545.
Well, again, I didn't hear the final amount reduction.
Yeah, $90,545.
Not the 433, the 90.
Yep.
And what's the basis of the 90 versus the 433 increase? $433,000 increase.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, so that's, when we received the February assessment from MWRA, that was the dollar value that they put in their report, and it differed from what the mayor and the commissioner had put in their report by $90,000, so I was making it to match. The mayor came back and said this evening that there's a $17,000 adder for
Chemicals.
$14,000 for something and $76,000 for chemicals, so.
Yep.
Again, I don't have any basis for it, I'm taking him on his word on that one.
Okay,
I don't-
thank you.
that's-
Well, it helps to follow it, because I wasn't for sure if you were level funding it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anyways, something that I will not be supporting, but motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All in favor? 1, 2, opposed? 3, it does not carry.
Mr. Chair, were we going to address the other energy portion in the school facilities, the gas, natural gas on page 68? Was that in question?
I didn't question it, only because the increase of cost, and as we've seen throughout the nation, of energy, I did not question some of those numbers.
And the reason, again, is I'm trying to stay into the same respective as what I was dealing with what I voted for on electricity. It's a hard, decision, because they went up $136,500.
Yes, sir.
And has energy conservation, which is on my mind, been considered? And I agree, natural gas has gone up. What did we reduce the electricity by, 100?
100.
I'd suggest we reduce the natural gas by, because they're asking for 136 by 100,000. That would be my motion.
What page is that?
It's on page 68.
Thank you.
I gotta get to it. Mr. Chair, that's a 30% increase, again.
Under natural gas?
Yeah, natural gas, page 68, 52200, natural gas. The budget was 591. They're asking for 136,500. Again, based on my concern for conservation measures, to get that kick-started, if I can say it that way, I would ask for a reduction of 100,000. That would be my motion.
Motion has been made to reduce the line item 52200, natural gas, by $100,000. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Counselor Doucette has his hand
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry, Councilor Doucette.
Ask for questions and look.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think this is a good idea, but it's not about saving money. It's actually about reducing natural gas use in the community, because we're supposed to be, as a state, I believe, phasing out natural gas by 2050, if I remember the date right. So, you know, this gets into a conversation with DPW, which is effectively, how are you gonna phase out natural gas? I mean, because this is where we need to go, and we gotta start with small steps now and start working towards this, because at some point, we need to really start addressing what needs to get done. So, just wanted to raise that as an issue. I'm not a voting member of this,
Absolutely.
but for the Finance Committee, consider that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Neiman.
I mean, I appreciate Councilor Doucette's point. I think it's, you know, it's an important conversation to have. I'm not sure that I think by cutting the budget, it's going to start that conversation. I think if we want to start that conversation, we should put something on the floor to encourage a conversation, you know, and ask the mayor to, you know, engage in a dialogue about that. I think cutting their budget's just going to say, okay, and if we go over, hey, guess what? We need more money because the gas bill came. So, you know, I appreciate your point, and, you know, you got to start somewhere. But I mean, I think we should, if we want to start somewhere, we should start somewhere.
How much does, the motion is to cut by how much?
100,000.
100, okay.
So a motion has been made and seconded to reduce the natural gas line item 52200 by $100,000. All in favor for the reduction? All opposed? Carries 3-2. Okay, so it's another 100,000.
I will just throw out there, and I'm not a member, but the Assistant Commissioner line has not been addressed.
And I don't know if Diane, you had the, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Alls I had was a 111. I didn't hear any of the decimal, or the figures afterwards, so I didn't know if you knew exactly if it was 111 something, or. No, I got the account number, how much the mayor said the position was paying. I thought he said it was 111,000 something. No, that's okay, I'm not sure. What, was it 307? Okay, 307?
Right. 307.94.
So, councilors, that position is because it's in two spots, all right? It's in public facilities, and it's in maintenance for school, so they shift the, so each line item, again, according to my math, in the current budget is at 57,750, so 57,750 times 2 means in the budget, there's 115,500, and if it's 111,308, the adjustment minus 111,308, the adjustment should be 4,192, and you divide that by 2 because you got to take it out of each one. 296 would be adjust. And Diane, stop me if I'm off the rails, but that 50291 account number in the building property maintenance and in the school building and property maintenance 50291, the motion would be to reduce each one by $2,096. And I did that math fast, so can someone check my math, please?
That's right, I rounded though.
It's okay. so 2050 each? Okay, so reduce each one by, so the motion, if the Finance Committee wants to consider it, is to reduce each one of those line items, 50291, again, in facilities and schools, by $2,050 each.
Chair Irish, I'll make the motion to reduce.
$2,050 each. Council Perman?
I'll make the motion to make that reduction at both the facilities and schools for 50291.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to reduce the Assistant Commissioner's line item by each line item by $2,050. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. And those are two different account numbers too, right? Mr. President? Same number.
15, 20, and 30, 32.
Good job, Finance. Okay. Councilwoman, do you have a quick?
No, I was just going to say, unless there are further cuts people want to make, is that we would make some recommendation that would go forward. So with those cuts, we would approve the budget as amended, and then that would go before the committee, or excuse me, from the committee to the full council. Is that the next step here?
That is correct.
So, again, I appreciate the indulgence of the finance committee and the councils. Those were mine. You may have other councils that want to do something else. So I would ask that question first, but then Council Perham is correct. Then you want to reconcile, and I'm not going to say my number yet to Diane to see if our math is correct when we get down to the finals. But
I have no other comments.
I'm good.
I'm good. All right, so I will make my motion, which would be to approve the fiscal year 24 budget with the line item adjustments that were already made by the council this evening, and push that forward for the full council for further review. And
do we need the amended amount?
So if I can, so there's two things. So one is the reduction. So I'm gonna repeat them so everybody can kind of check the notes. Then I'll give my number, and Diane will yell at me if I'm right or wrong. So the electricity count is being reduced by 100,000. Reserve for salaries, 300,000. Fire overtime, 50,000. Capital projects, 300,000. Solid waste, 86,000. And the two line items for the assistant commissioner, $4,100. That's my number after that, when you do the math, again, with our budget of $188,751,024, less all those adjustments, which I didn't total, but.
And you didn't do the library then?
Well, I'm getting to that. Hang on. I'm getting to the library and the supplemental part. Comes out to a budget that the finance committee will be approving of $187,000 million. Yeah, I was hoping to really say it.
Me too.
Cut the whole thing. We just cut the whole thing.
$187,910,924 for a reduction of $840,100.
That's what I have,
The
940.
natural gas. Do you know?
Oh, I forgot the natural, okay, yep, nope, you're good. See, that's the value of a peer check.
The natural gas.
I did it by shorthand. I had 9. Longhand, whatever they call it.
What did you have, Council? Oh,
Hang on, kids, hang on.
It's 900.
940,100. And then it's 187,810,924.
And the reduction again was?
The one I forgot, what I failed to mention was the gas.
Yeah.
For $100,000. So again, just so everybody's clear, electricity, $100,000, reserve for salaries, $300,000. Fire overtime, $50,000. Capital, $300,000. Solid waste, $86,000. Gas, $100,000. That's a total adjustment to the budget of $940,100. Oh, I forgot the assistant commissioner, sorry about that.
At the 4 point.
The assistant commissioner's $4,100, so the total reduction is $940,100, which is a budget of $187,810,924.
924.
So is the reduction 940,100? Okay, because you said you forgot something.
Yeah, and I forgot to add that, but that's included in the 940,100. So, Mr. Chair, so the first motion, as Council Perlman indicated, would be the reduction of the 940,100. The second motion would be to request the mayor submit a supplemental budget that adds in the part-time clerk for the elections, the salary adjustment for the assistant city solicitor, hey, we just gave him a real good raise, city assistant clerk, and to provide the 2 salary ordinances for the library.
The library.
Is there anything else that we think we're missing?
Not that I can think of, Mr. Chair. Can I motion to what was just said by President Rossi? So I don't have to repeat it?
You can, Perlman, and then you can second.
Who's on a roll here, Mark?
I told.
No, I'm kidding.
I took it away from Council Perlman.
only-
I apologize. Go ahead. No,
No,
you
I would
were-
just, when we
forgot.
made the earlier motions around the elections and city clerk budget, we would need to make that again, because didn't we already motion and vote as a body to send the mayor to do that supplemental budget already? Do we need to do it again? Didn't we do that as one of the first things?
No.
I don't know. Apologize, Council Perlman.
I said when we were going through the budget initially, I had motioned to do that with the assistant clerk and the clerk already, so do we need to do another motion for that, to send that to the mayor?
That to the mayor, yes.
Yeah, well, I just think to make it clear that
Okay.
you want the amendment to the budget to include the part-time clerk, the assistant clerk, and the salary ordinances. So that's kind of ties it all up in a bow. Yes, they were already approved, but this
Okay,
is kind
just
of
do it
doing it in totality to say, hey, these are the 2 motions. One, reduce the budget by this. The other 2, request a supplemental budget of really just $22,190.
Okay, so,
And if that supplemental, or if the salary ordinance isn't there, then we would reduce the library positions?
Yeah, I mean, so play it out. On May 22nd, on Monday, the finance chair will report out the report of the work of the finance committee. I would encourage everyone to read the report and check the math. So then it's going to lay on the table. We'll have the public hearing. I mean, if everything comes down like the mayor is capable of doing with the amendment to the budget, then we could approve it that night, but if not, it would be on our June 5th agenda for approval. And we have time, 45 days is June, I'm already going on summer vacation, is June 20th, and we can set, if we need to set a special meeting, we can set it up for June 12th, if the council needs to act or add another meeting. So there is time. I mean,
That's
we'll
good.
get feedback at the public hearing and see what the final outcome will be.
okay, so I can reiterate the motion, and I just wanted to clarify too, that from Solicitor Grossfield, the budget would need to have been approved by, is it June 20th? Is that what he said? So I just wanted to reiterate that for the timeline that President Ossing just mentioned. Okay, so let me see if I can do that.
Not to interrupt you, Councilor
Just wanted to remind us, at one point, there was a discussion about the snow and ice account, which was going from 500,000 to $1 million. The committee didn't talk about that one. I was just, did I miss something? Is that not being, did that get, there was pros and cons on that, so I was just going to remind the committee, is that something you wanted to discuss?
I wasn't in support of doing any cuts on the snow and ice.
But thank you for bringing that up, yeah. Okay.
And, Mr. Chair, as you know, when it comes before the council again,
Yes, thank you.
it's
Mr.
wide open again. If there's stuff that wants to, we can't add, but there's stuff that folks want to adjust, those amendments can be made the night when the
Absolutely.
finance report is available to vote on.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. All right, so my first motion would be to make an approval of the budget with the reductions as indicated already through this body by $940,100 in the various line items as was discussed. And then I would make a related motion around the request to the mayor for a supplemental budget that adds back in the position that was deleted by the mayor, 50140 for the 17,600, and then the assistant clerk increase to support the new salary ordinance of the 4,590, and then also including the salary ordinance information for the 2 library positions, the head of adult services and then the program outreach coordinator, since we did not receive that as part of this proposal in advance.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion been made and seconded. All in favor of the reduction and sending it back to the mayor? Carries 5-0. Next, entertain a motion. Oh.
I was gonna say, dare I say motion to adjourn, because it's not 11:30, so.
No, we still got to make a motion to approve the amended amount? Or, no?
Well, it's kind of buried in the 904, but I
Okay.
mean, you can if you want to, but that's the.
I wasn't sure this was, okay.
Yeah, no, and that'll all show up. Karen's got some work to do, but we'll make sure Karen's successful.
Okay, so motion to you're saying make a recommendation to approve based on what was said already,
As the amended amount?
as the amended?
With the amended reduction, and do we want to mention the new bottom line?
You can, it's
Which is
187.
180, go ahead, Council.
$187,810,924.
That's what I
The new
have.
amount, as if my writing of everyone's math was correct.
Correct. I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the amended amount of $187,810,924. All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned at 9:01 PM. Thank you.